Oh my God, that noise is getting on my nerves. Hi, Katalia. This is always a longer space, so I have to give people a minute to come in. And let me see how the people on YouTube, can you guys hear me? Let's see. Yep. Okay. Just waiting for the judge to get here. I got 2-3 things going on at once. The Judge Joe Brown on YouTube, this space, and I have a premiere on my main channel, The Real Dana, that's happening now. Crazy. Marcia, Dr. Sinister, hi Barb. Let's see something here. Okay, good. And the judge will be up shortly. He has to take his time. He takes his time coming in. Either it's the Wi-Fi or he's probably not even home or fiddling around doing something else. So yeah. And while we wait for him, oh, here he go. Oh, damn, he's on time. Not even on time. He's early. Hey, I just sent you the link for co-host. Can you hear me? You're muted.
I can hear you, but okay, now I'm co-host. It was just showing me as a speaker.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You're early. I was about to clip up some short clips while I wait for you.
It took me a little while to make the connection.
Yeah. How are you?
I'll manage.
I thought that was a good show we did last night.
It was good. Okay, here we go. Alrighty, inside the house. Let's hope the connection keeps. Alrighty.
All right, so let's just get started. JFK files released today.
Okay.
I
actually
pulled
right
it up.
Now.
Can you hear me?
So I'm in.
Wait, can you hear me?
I suppose we can do what we have to do.
Can you hear me?
Okay, what are we gonna do?
Judge, can you hear me?
Hello?
He can't hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Hello?
Oh my God. He can't hear me. Can somebody request to come up so that maybe he can hear you, but he can't hear me, and I'm gonna have to call him to tell him that. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Hi Terry, can you guys hear me? And you could hear him as well. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can hear him as well. Yeah.
Okay, he couldn't hear me, so it must have been connection. Here he goes.
Oh, probably he so, yeah.
All right. Can you hear me, Judge? Judge.
I hear you.
Oh, he hear you now.
Okay. I just sent you the co-host link. It must have been when you was walking in the house. Maybe the connection was going in and out.
Okay.
But because
Thank you, Dana. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Tiffany, Immortal, Terry. Thank you guys so much. So yeah. So last night, y'all thought it was a good show. And then, of course, the JFK files were released. I actually pulled up the website. I ain't reading no 80,000 pages. That's going to take some months. But I just pulled up I clicked on the first two links. Very interesting. So I figure, you kind of seen the documents prior, and you gave some really, really good insight last night. And I actually clipped that and uploaded it earlier today. And I was like, we definitely have to talk about it you have to talk about it on Space tonight. And I know people may have questions or just want to add to the conversation to go in depth further, because it's very fascinating, the things you were saying. And of course, this is still open mic. So, if people want to bring up anything else that's going on, I did put hashtag SpaceX because, Elon had to send his rocket ship up there to save the two astronauts that's been up there for 9 months, and they just landed today back on Earth. And, they're saying it's going to take them some time to really recuperate as far as their health and stuff like that. So if anybody want to talk about that, NASA, outer space, SpaceX, you can. And hi to everybody on YouTube. If you have a question, you can put a Q for question. It'd be nice if you send it via super chat, but put a Q for question and I will ask the judge your question. So yeah. And then again, please request to come up. I usually have this, I would say 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes they end up going longer, but I got to see how I feel on a 3 hour mark if it does. And request to come up. And you have a judge.
Okay. We saw with what has happened, Boeing was a co-contractor on making the space taxis, as it were, to get back and forth to the space station, but theirs doesn't work too well. So Musk had to supply a SpaceX stand-in for the Boeing failure. Um, think about it. The Air Force wanted him to do 20 special launch tests hooked up with the Defense Department, which is they want to upgrade their heavy missile system. And he's into the highest security clearances that the country has because there's nothing more important to the national defense than being able to deliver thermonuclear warheads 8,000-9,000 miles away. So just keep that in mind. But people seem to want to commit acts of vandalism against Teslas and stuff at dealers and bad mouthing because they don't like him bringing that same efficiency to cleaning up the government. I mean, look at it. He set PayPal up so it works. He came up with Tesla and set up from scratch a brand new automotive manufacturing company, which isn't a failure, which just hasn't happened in a long, long time. He set up SpaceX, and we just dealt with that. Then he acquired Twitter and turned it into X to preserve free speech. And now he's doing XAI to make the world's most advanced computers. I mean, this is like Henry Ford, Boeing, Lockheed, Martin, all of these people rolled into one. So you've got somebody that's exceptional, that also happens to be the richest man in world history. And some people, I guess, don't like that. Yeah. He's trying to turn the U.S. government into an operation that's as efficient as his businesses. Remember, Boeing that's been around for more than 100 years can't get it done. Lockheed lost the contract. North American Rockwell wasn't even in the running. Grumman consortium wasn't in the running, but SpaceX was. So just think about it. If somebody can do all of that and answer a post on X, this is one of these guys that doesn't sleep much. and he is above and beyond the typical ordinary person, kind of a Superman type. I guess if we really got into analyzing the Superman series through Dale, people would hate his guts rather than admiring him because of the same reasons they don't like Elon. He's trying to do it right and has the ability to do it right, so people kind of resent that, or a lot of people do. But anyway, I just thought I'd make that remark. We'll come back in about half hour into this when more people are on. I'll run down some stuff to look for on these released files that are coming out on the JFK assassination.
Okay. Well, I want to get to anti-woke.
I pass the mic.
Can you still hear me?
You there?
Oh my God, he
Hello?
can't hear me. Anti-woke.
Hey, are you calling me anti-woke?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't raise my hand. I wasn't. I
Oh,
was
you
busy
requested
going.
to be a speaker.
No. I'm good. I'm ready. I was just going through some of the files.
Okay, so Judge, ask the judge if he could hear you.
Judge, can you hear me? Okay.
Okay, he dropped down a listener. I don't know what it is. He can't. After a while he can't hear me. I don't know. It's the reception in his house. So he'll come
Oh,
back up.
is he moving around in the car or something?
No, he was coming in from, it sounds like, the garage, but he has a lot of sometimes dead spots in the house, so it may go in and out depending on where he's at. Okay, so you wanted to wait before you chime in.
Well, no. I mean, I can just start the topics off real quick. I put in the comment section. Going through these paperworks, MLK stuff is getting interesting. There's just so much to go through. The JFK files finding some Israel involvement, and let's see, what was the last? Oh, and interesting that JFK document I shared calling Joe Biden a traitor. It's going to take a long time to go through this stuff. But anyway, so my thoughts are, if anybody's gone through, I'd like to ask everybody listening, if you've found anything worth referencing, and if you know, I've been looking. They had videos up earlier today, but I can't find a way to access them. So just thought because of the title, I thought I'd start off the conversation about the JFK. I didn't expect all the Martin Luther King stuff to be in there, so I got kind of distracted with that.
Really? Okay, I know that was in. See, I just clicked when I saw the 80,000 pages. That intimidated me, but it's like I just clicked the first two just before I started the space. But I didn't know all that. I wonder why that was in there. So
Yeah, I mean the
If I can
MLK stuff.
answer that, they released this stuff 36 years, 35, 34 years ago. An act of Congress ordered all research, documents, correspondence on any of the assassinations or attempts to be sent to a repository. It was on 14th Street in downtown DC. Until about 2004 or 5, you could pay a fee and enter a request, and they would get you the category of documents or the specific document. It's not going to do you much good if you don't know what to look for and you don't have some clues. Part of the problem is going to be is that every time there is research required, they rely on the FBI, but the more detailed research that reveals the inter-office memoranda that the FBI were sending back and forth internally, you will see that they were stonewalling the investigation or returning deliberately falsified reports. That's all in there. The reason that you got the King stuff is that's part of this. It's not new. It's just it had to be requested specifically. Now Trump is making sure it gets published so it's out there and people can't escape the consequences. And there's another
Well,
35 years tacked on.
well, I did find something, Judge, that I thought was interesting. So they have, like I said, there's a lot to go through. So some of this discussion may be a little segmented because it's a lot to go through. But they do have in the JFK files a list of known certified fake passports with names and aliases, but it seems that and if you go through a lot of the documents, even the summaries, you'll find that it says that the FBI, people handling the investigation, intentionally permanently deleted some things and then permanently marked over identities of others. So it'll be
Okay,
interesting to find out with using the new technology. I know that some of those things can with the AI and
that's dead
you
end
know
stuff. I'll tell you a clue. If you want to get an avenue of research that will be very rewarding and very informative, and you will get stuff that nobody has ever talked about, ask for or look for the exchange between the lawyers for Billy Saul Estes and a guy named Stephen Trott, who was with the U.S. Attorney's Office at the time. He later became a federal judge, and prior to that, he had been an assistant DA in Los Angeles. Trott made an agreement with the lawyers for Saul Estes. Saul Estes was a Texas oil gangster, and Trott agreed to seek commutation for his sentence if the information he provided proved reliable. The FBI was supposed to investigate it, and when you read the internal memoranda inside the FBI, they said stonewall this requested investigation from Trott, and they came back, there was nothing to it, and Trott withdrew his offer. But there actually was. The detectives who were involved in the original JFK investigation contacted me around 1999 and had me there in 2000 in Dallas to show me what they came up with. That Carcano rifle that was found in the Eyrie, and the detective who found it was there for this conference, and they had noted that they did not have any of Lee Harvey Oswald's fingerprints on this rifle, but there were fingerprints. They did just not have any suspect to compare them to. But based on what they came up with after they got a hold of the Saul Estes communications with Trott, they got a suspect, and when they ran the suspect's prints, it was a bingo for the prints on the Carcano rifle. That individual had been class valedictorian in high school, captain of the football team, baseball team, and when he got to college was doing the same thing, then volunteered for World War II, was a decorated hero, came back out, finished up Yale, and shortly after he graduated, it was 1947, he was arrested and charged for first-degree murder after shooting somebody in the head 6 times in front of about 30 witnesses. He was convicted, sentenced to die by hanging, and 6 weeks after his conviction, the governor commuted his sentence to manslaughter and time served. This individual became a suspect in 35 other murders as a suspected hitman. The Dallas Police Department, when they got an order to exhume this guy's body, found that the coffin was empty and there was no one in the grave. The grave was in the cemetery operated by the biggest mortuary service provider in the state of Texas, who also happened to be the medical examiner that did the autopsy on JFK. This same person is the one that certified that the individual whose fingerprints were found to be on the rifle was in fact killed in a one-car wreck on the Texas desert in broad daylight with no witnesses. That's the same person whose body was missing from the grave. Now, this medical examiner is an interesting character. He got charged with being a hitman and was eventually developed as a suspect in quite a few contract killings. shot one individual purportedly 5 or 6 times and set the house on fire to burn the corpse up. But the guy survived and fingered the medical examiner. He was placed under arrest and he was being transported to Dallas County Courthouse when he allegedly tried to escape and got shot 14 times. Well, the Dallas detectives got an exhumation order, and when they went into his grave, there was nobody in the coffin. So they were suspecting that this was a witness protection thing of an elaborate type. But anyway, that individual pops up again and again and would have been developed as an interesting alternative to the theory had the FBI not, as revealed, not come back with a legitimate investigation, but as revealed through their internal memoranda, were ordered by J. Edgar Hoover to stall and falsify the results. So stuff
Judge.
like that is interesting, but that's in there.
So, Judge, first of all, if you could DM me the case you're referencing and how to find that information, it would be
All
greatly
I can,
appreciated. What's that?
it's been 25 years since I saw it, and I was sitting down at a desk, a big table with some Dallas detectives, and they were going over it. But I can tell you, just look for the information, the reference if they have an index on communications involving attorneys for Billy Saul Estes, SOL, separate word, ESTES, and Stephen Trott of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Estes and Trott.
Yeah, look for those
Oh,
two. You will find some very interesting stuff. And on the
well, the
ML,
thing,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just want to jump in. So the thing, you got a lot of listeners here. I don't know how many people are research addicts like myself, but I found it interesting. If you read the summaries and conclusions, it pretty much points you in the right direction. So there's a lot of going through the paperwork now. The way they have it listed, they're all just PDF files with numbers. So you're just going to have to go through all of them.
Well, yeah,
But
they didn't
I am
index.
finding what you said, which is interesting, is I am finding a pattern of people that gave formal statements that within 6 months, when they were going to revisit him, ended up quote unquote dead. And then there's a ton of lists of fake passports and alias. So, like you're saying with the open coffins, there's definitely, in both cases, MLK and JFK, they definitely say that it was a conspiracy. But I think a lot of it is going to have to be through going with new technologies and really looking through it, because a lot of what they're saying is if they deleted something purposely, and you can tell on each not some of the documents have notations that sections were deleted, but it seems to be a pattern that JFK, they acknowledge at least 2 shooters. If you look through the summaries, you can see the gaps. And then, of course, when you're talking about the gaps in investigations and the shady characters involved, such as the local police and all that, I think those are the gaps that are going to need to be gone through. And then, of course, there's a whole other. So that's the local issue, and then you also have, you know, the Cuban government, Israel intelligence. It's crazy stuff, man.
Well, I'll
So
give you.
anybody that's
Let me give you one
anybody
other.
that's look.
Go ahead. I didn't want to forget what I was going to add to this mix, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just going to drop this real quick. Anybody that's interested in investigating or looking through it, go through the summaries and investigate the conclusions and summaries, and start there, because you'll start to see obvious. They acknowledge some things, but intentionally leave other things out. Go ahead, Judge. I'm done.
Well, okay. Some other stuff came to light when the Dallas detectives were retired. Understand, this is 25 years ago, and myself sat down and went through this stuff. One, there is a clean bullet hole through the front windshield of the limo. They actually had the real limo. It still has the bullet hole damage that's never been repaired. And upon conducting some actual tests on the same kind of material, if you fired a bullet and it went from the inside out, meaning from back to front, it bulges the window where it hits, just like if somebody's head hit it. If the bullet comes from the front to the rear, it puts a nice, clean, caliber size hole in the window. There is a nice, clean, caliber size hole in the window that lines up with the so called magic bullet. Next thing, what winds up happening is when we went back there, when they were actually running the limo back and forth on the route with dummies representing the president, well, Kennedy, the governor, his wife, and Jacqueline Kennedy, everybody said, oh, the light bulb went on. It couldn't have been a shot from the grassy knoll. That would be impossible. Why? Because when the limo is running by, he, meaning Kennedy, would have been totally obscured to a shooter at the grassy knoll because his head would only be hitting about chest high to the spectators who would be standing at roadside. Next thing is one of the detectives who was involved in this was very suspect about the conclusion that Oswald was the primary shooter. Why? Because he's the one that went in the building, the book repository, to talk to the people as this immediately unfolded. He says he was talking to the building superintendent in the basement. The elevators in that building were installed in the late 1890s, so you could not summons them. You had to go get them. So they were on the basement level. They had to walk up to the eyrie where he eventually found the rifle. And you had to walk up one side of the building, go across the first floor to the opposite side, then walk up the staircase there, 1, 2, 3 flights to get to the third floor. He says as he and the building superintendent were walking along the corridor from one side of the building to the other on the first floor, they passed Lee Harvey Oswald. The detective said he stopped Oswald and inquired who he was, and the building superintendent said he works there. He's one of the employees. At that point, the detective said he looked up to his right, and the indicator for the elevator was moving, and as he's standing there eyeballing Oswald, the elevator moves past him and goes to the basement. So it couldn't have been Oswald on the elevator, and the elevator had been on the third floor. He said when he got to the third floor, he saw the rifle laid out prominently in the middle of the floor. That's when he had a crew come and seal it with the yellow tape and make the call in, I think we found the murder weapon. But he's not sure that the shot came from there. Where we came up with a conclusion as to where the shot came from, and there's not one word about that anywhere in these reports, is from the railroad tracks or from the bridge. The bridge had a walkway through it that was put there with openings facing out to the roadway. The openings were there because the walkway dealt with gas lines that were put through that bridge in the 1890s to supply the gas lighting system that was then in place in Dallas. There were also 7 railroad tracks up there on that bridge and 6 or 7 railway cars. And there was only one cop whose back was to them because he was watching the parade. We looked at photographs taken immediately after the incident that showed that. Now, leading from the grassy knoll is a grate that could have had a rifle drop down it, and that grate enters into a tunnel. It's about 5.5 feet high, so somebody in a crouch could literally run through it, and it comes out about 350 yards away in a a weed and tumbleweed overgrown field on the other side of a rail yard. The thought was is somebody did the shooting from one of the boxcars, dropped the rifle down through the grating. Somebody took it away from there. Now, the detectives all noted that seconds and minutes after the shooting, there were people from the Texas Rangers, the state police, there were Dallas detectives for the city and the county, there were federal agents from Secret Service and FBI.
What happened? Can you guys still hear him?
No, I think he dropped out again.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody probably
Well,
maybe somebody called
well,
him because somebody called him and knocked him right out.
well, somebody else can talk if they want, but what along the lines of
Oh,
what he was saying too is I think the smoking gun, so to speak, will be the undoctored Zapruder film for sure
so
because
here he go.
I I remember seeing the footage where, and you can call me conspiracy theorist if you want, but I saw it and it was verified, um, tampered with, of a muzzle flash coming from the front seat of the car. So that's also another issue. But I like I said, the videos they were up earlier this morning, but who's to
Mhm.
know if it's been doctored or not?
So I'm gonna go.
Maybe that's
I'm gonna go to exit.
Nobody called me.
Oh, I'm gonna go to Exorcist, and then Nancy for Liberty, and then Peter. Hey, Peter. Hey, guys.
Let me say
thank
this.
you.
May I say just one thing real quickly? I can carry on my story later with the details that the detectives and I got into in 2000. But over the last several days, I've had several interviews on this, and every time we get to this, I get knocked off or something happens, and nobody called me.
I mean, it could be a conspiracy, or it could be that you need to update your cell phone too.
Yeah, but it's peculiar that it always occurs at the exact same place.
Oh.
And if I did it again, watch what happens. It's going to happen again.
All right. Well, let me go to Exorcist.
Hey, how you doing, Dana?
Hi.
How you doing, Your Honor?
How are you?
I'm doing okay. Like it's like I've been trying to go through the files, but it's like 1,123 of them, and like what I'm noticing though, a lot of the things that were allowed to happen, whether it be him getting a visa and like a lot of things like things in over in Europe, a lot of it has to do with like it seems like to me, and this has always been a theory of mine, that the UN is responsible for it some way. And like with his freedom of speech, like where he was saying we can't imitate our enemies, and he was talking about the Soviet Union. We can't imitate their secrecy and silence and propaganda and be like them. And I believe like it was he was talking about the UN trying to do that. And I believe the CIA was working with them. And I'd call me a conspiracy theorist, but it's just a theory I'm working on.
Judge, is you want to comment? You're muted.
If I might give you a lead, there is a book called Legacy of Ashes. It was published around 2003 or 4, and it's based on 50,000 documents that were released from the intelligence community, and the writer analyzed them. I can't remember his name, but the name of the book is called Legacy of Ashes. And in there, relative to the Kennedy assassination, is a telling set of passages that deal with what the White House tape said. They kept White House tapes then. It was from Eisenhower's era, not from Nixon when they started them. And in there, Robert Kennedy, McNamara, and the Secretary of State were having a discussion about who knew that they had ordered multiple assassination attempts of Fidel Castro. And what the tapes said was that Fidel knew, and he's probably the main one that knows about what we were trying to do to him. He says, we have to keep this secret because if it was discovered what we had tried to do, we'd all be in a federal penitentiary. Because what they were talking about doing to Castro was and still is illegal under American law. So they were discussing that, and they were discussing further in these White House tapes who might try to assassinate. In fact, it was saying, who do you think might want to assassinate my brother? He hadn't been killed and he was still alive. So they were discussing how the American intelligence community was completely penetrated by the Cubans, whereas the reverse was not true at all. So that was an item of discussion. And there's also a lot in there that if you read what was in those documents that were released, they dovetail quite well with what's in this collection of so-called research and reports on the assassinations. Now, you do not have benefit of what the Dallas detectives came up with years later with more sophisticated investigative techniques and devices available to them, and in the way of long hindsight, decades after the fact, with a lot of thinking that had been brought to bear on the subject. And when you talk about the MLK thing, they don't have benefit of the research that I conducted on it. And a lot of what's in there relative to MLK is just complete nonsense. But what I want to look at is to see if they had the same memoranda, internal memoranda that are in the files in the court case that was in my courtroom that I reviewed, wherein they were having a discussion on whether King would be more dangerous alive or as a dead martyr. And they opted and made him a dead martyr because he actually was on the way out as somebody to pay attention to at that time. And what they were interested in King about was whether or not he would be someone that would galvanize the growing anti-war movement in 1967, 68, the way they thought he did the civil rights movement, and whether he would revitalize labor. They did not give a damn about civil rights because their internal conclusion was that it was dead and militants had taken over the role that King had been playing. So that's I found interesting, and I'm going to look to see if they have those documents in what they have in King. If they don't, I've seen them, and I know something is not right with what they have, and some things were being destroyed. By the way, every time I got to the point where I was when I got cut off, for the last 3 days on various shows I've been doing it, it gets cut off. It's like somebody's listening. So later on, I'm going to start where I got cut off.
Well, one
See if
second.
it happens again.
Hey, can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, 1 second before your question. Let me just interject. Who you been moonlighting with on other platforms?
I mean, it's just like research.
Oh, yeah.
In other words, doctor this, professor this, and so this.
Just check
with some of these agencies and stuff.
Oh, all right. Go ahead, Exorcist, and then I'm gonna go to Nancy, then Peter, and then it could be, I guess, a group discussion.
Did you happen to see the interview that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. did with Bill Maher, where he was talking about how the guy that was locked up wasn't the real person who killed his father, but it was some guy who worked for Lockheed Martin, who was head of his security, who took him through the kitchen, and that the gunshots came from his back instead of from in front of him, where the other person who's locked up still shot from?
Well, I talked to the detective who actually arrested Oswald and took him into custody. and
Oh,
was
I'm talking
right
about
there
Robert.
when he
I'm
got
talking about.
shot.
Oh, I was talking about Robert F. Kennedy,
Oh,
not
Robert F.
John F.
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Okay, I've had a
Yeah, yes, sir.
conversation with the medical examiner for Los Angeles at the time at a conference, which was about 2016, I would say. It was in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. So he had some interesting things to say about what his autopsy showed, and also some updated stuff on what was going on relative to the evidence. Also, the number of gunshots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which don't match up. So it's like questionable. He also is the person that did the autopsy on Marilyn Monroe. And he thought they were connected since Marilyn had had an affair with both Kennedys, Robert Kennedy Sr. and JFK. And he noted that she was poisoned in a real weird fashion. She supposedly died from an overdose of barbiturates, but interestingly enough, she did not consume the barbiturates orally, but had them inserted anally, which is kind of
What?
weird. So,
Judge, she was connected with Anton LaVey as well, the leader of the Church of Satan.
well, it may be, but that has nothing to do with it. What seems to have happened from some other research that got out into it was some guys started running their mouth too much, and Marilyn heard too much. She wasn't looked at as somebody that would be an intentional potential informant on what she heard, but somebody that might be induced to spill something that was very crucial to national offense. So it looks like somebody killed her, according to the medical examiner, who is the same person that did the autopsy on Robert Kennedy.
That man, that's crazy right there by itself.
And
I appreciate. Yes,
by the
sir.
way,
Yes, John.
interesting to show you how deep it got. Remember, she's supposed to have sung "Happy Birthday" to JFK in the White House down in the basement party.
Yes, yes, Your Honor.
Okay, I've talked to somebody that was on the White House security detail in later years, and he said that's not what happened. She stripped naked, did lap dances for most of the press corps, pulled JFK's pants down, gave him a head job, swallowed, and then pranced around naked for quite a while and put on a real show for everybody. So it was that deep as to what was going on in there. And also that they had code names for two 19-year-olds that JFK supposedly had an affair with. He'd meet up in the swimming pool on the lower levels that they opened up because he had a congenital condition that was going to kill him in a few years. And on several occasions, he could not walk up the steps to Air Force One. They had to get a lift to take him up there.
Nancy, then Peter, then Nora. Nora.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Hello.
Nancy? Nancy?
I didn't take myself off the mic. Hi, Judge. Hi, Dana.
How
I'm a
are
little
you?
shaken because I just came from a site where when the JFK files came out, and somebody was going through them that used to work for Trump administration, the Treasury Department. And I didn't like what he was saying because I was alive when Kennedy was shot. I was a little kid, but I remember it really well. And what he was saying was that there was in the documents or in the whatever was released was, oh, there was proof that it was Oswald that killed him, and it was a single bullet, and that's what it was. And I'm like, okay, well, either something's been taken out or something, because you don't have the brain missing and all this. It wasn't a single bullet. There was no way in hell everybody knew it back then. I mean, I didn't, all the stuff, Judge. From what was released today, have you had a chance to look at it?
I saw a lot of the material more than 25 years ago. All right. courtesy of the Dallas Police Department, some retired members thereof, detectives who were involved in the original investigation. The problem with a lot of it is the FBI assembled the data and came up with the final conclusions, and it's obvious from reading the internal reports from the FBI that they were fabricating some of these reports. In some instances, they were just plain ignorant, but J. Edgar directed that they come up with some conclusions. And in other ones, they fabricated answers that were contrary to what the facts or the data seemed to indicate. And in others, they manufactured some fictional evidence that they were supposed to be relying on. So one of the questions is it's not so much that the FBI is implicated in the assassination. If the implication is why were they so into a cover-up?
No, exactly. Now, what was being said tonight, I forgot to mention, was that there was proof that on USS
that we didn't see that Dallas Police Department. What we came up with was somebody whose fingerprints were on the rifle, the Carcano rifle. And this information was developed by the detective who discovered the rifle and placed the whole IRI under an evidence lock. And also he participated in the arrest of Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, that person is not connected with the Russians. He's connected with organized crime in Texas, not the regular Italian mafia, but the oil mafia in Texas. And also, he is the subject of an exhumation. He's supposed to have died in a one-car wreck in the middle of the Texas desert in broad daylight. He was supposed to be buried in one of the largest cemeteries in Texas, operated by the person that was the medical examiner who did the autopsy on JFK. When they got the exhumation order and they dug the coffin up, there was no body in the coffin. The medical examiner that did the report on JFK had been placed under arrest some years later on an organized crime matter as a hitman. There was a person that was shot 5 or 6 times, was left for dead, and the house where he was set on fire, but the guy revived and managed to crawl out badly burned. He identified the medical examiner as his assassin, and based on what came up, the medical examiner got involved in some other hits. Now, the Dallas detectives got an exhumation order to go into this guy's grave. He was supposed to have been buried in his own cemetery. When they dug that coffin up, there was no body in it either. Now,
Peter?
Hey, Dan. How are you?
Good. How you doing? Is it still
Good.
snowing there?
It cleared up yesterday. Today was beautiful. It was a bluebird day. Lots of sun.
Okay.
It was really nice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Hey, Judge. Great
how
to
you
hear
doing?
you. Good, good. I just started reading a book called Kill. Let's see. It was Annie Jacobson. It's called, give me a second, Surprise, Kill, Vanish. And it's the history of the assassination program of the CIA in America. And from everything that you're saying, it all lines up with, I'm only in the first chapter, but it all lines up with what she's saying in the book. That this is like a third option for the president, where diplomacy doesn't work and war is just a terrible answer. They go with this third option of employing the CIA to, take the person out. So, in my mind, based upon what I've seen from the release today and hearing other speakers,
Hello?
what did
Yeah,
you hear me?
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dana.
All right. So, but Judge, I don't think he could. And somebody else say something. I want to see if he can hear somebody else.
Yes.
I can hear both the judge and
All right,
And
he
just
declined. He dropped down. He'll come back
He,
up.
he dropped. Yeah.
So I don't know. I make is it something
but
where
but
do you?
Peter was breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay, I see him.
Were you able to hear me when I said, Dana, about the CIA's assassination program?
Yeah, I heard you.
Yeah. I guess we'll
Where's
wait.
he?
So I don't have to I don't want to repeat myself for everybody in the
Yeah, I
audience.
just sent
Yeah.
him. I just sent the judge. I just sent you the co-host request. Uh, and I'm like, if they release these documents, they shouldn't be messing with nobody's connection. Like, if it's out, it's out. Judge, I sent you the co-host request. So
I've seen this multiple times, Dana, especially when talking about Diddy in regards to what happened with his case, because he is an owner in this app with Guy Ocieri.
By the way, the book everybody should read who's doing research is called Legacy of Ashes, about 2003 or 4, analyzing 50 some thousand heretofore classified intelligence documents. Read that, and it makes a lot of sense out of what's going on. That
Yeah,
it's
Judge, I
not
just put it on my
otherwise
Amazon list
apparent.
of books to read. It's a long one, 877 pages, but it looks really good. Got a lot of good reviews. I guess long story short, where I was going with that is, from what I've read and what I'm hearing, it looks like there was a potential that Israel was involved, because Kennedy was trying to make them register as a foreign agent.
Well, there is a discussion about that. Mossad is beneficiary of a thing in Israeli law where assassination for political purposes is a legitimate tool of diplomacy, and it's not considered criminal there. So if somebody in the Mossad assassinates an individual, Israel will protect them from extradition or foreign apprehension. It's interesting.
So, Judge, and I know based upon your wealth of knowledge and your background, when a trial is being tried, right? The prosecution is going to always look to motive, right? They're going to look to tie, even though that's not an element of the crime. They're going to look to present to the jury, why did the individual do this? Here's why they had the motive to do it. So in this instance, the
Now,
motive for
actually,
Israel.
let me disabuse you of something. That's Hollywood, and that's fiction. In 50 years, not once have I ever heard anybody in front of a jury argue motive. In other words, why would you do it? The issue is, did somebody intend to do the act that caused the crime? The motive is this thing like they did with Perry Mason, beyond a shadow of a doubt. You don't have to have beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, something that when you analyze it using common rationality, reason, logic, and experience, it is plausible. I mean, you could say he was on top of that pillar because he flew up there. That's a shadow of a doubt, but people don't fly, so that's not reasonable. But if it's a reasonable doubt, in other words, even if you believe the guy is guilty, but you have to acknowledge that there is a reasonable alternative based on potential human analysis that could have occurred, you're supposed to acquit him even if you believe he's guilty. And I know what the law is on that because I wrote the charge for Tennessee on it that stood for about 30 years.
I appreciate you correcting me on that. I'm going to note that. So I guess the next question would be, what is reasonableness, and whose reasonableness?
Well, the charge goes, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are to assess the theory of the state, and you are to find beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant did, in fact, commit all of the elements necessary to commit the crime and did commit the crime as charged. If you have any doubt that is reasonable based on human logic, rationality, reason, experience, and analysis, that could serve as an alternative to the theory advanced by the state, you must acquit the defendant, even if you personally believe that he is guilty. Even if you believe he is guilty, if there is any doubt that exists that could serve as a logical doubt, you must acquit. And it went on in that light. I wrote the jury instructions. See, judges make law because there is no statute on what reasonable doubt amounts to. That's up to the judges to make that determination. They have pattern jury instructions based on what committees of judges or a judge wrote. Now, I wrote the one on reasonable doubt, the one on assessment of witness testimony, and on basically a few other things, but no need to get into them right now. So judges do make law. And in fact, the very first case heard by the U.S. Supreme Court said all law in the United States is judge-made law until a legislative body supersedes it.
Now, Judge, I'm going to get where I'm going. One more question in regards to what you just said. In your experience, in all the cases that you've actually been seated over, how many times has the jury acquitted versus convicted?
Well, let's put it this way. Less than 2.5% of the people in American penitentiaries were convicted by juries. 97+% pled guilty, and 84 to 87% confessed. Now, the reality is you have probably a 75% chance of acquittal in most trials. I would say based on 50 years of observation and experience. Now, the thing of it is out of every 5 juries, 3 of them are excellent and really do their job. One of them, you want to shake your head in shame when the jury foreman, when I let everybody talk to the jury after the verdict was said, oh, there was lots of reasonable doubt, but we figured that the smart defense lawyers just kept us from hearing why the detectives charged him, and we felt the police charged somebody with a crime, he must be guilty. And
how is that not able to be thrown out on appeal?
I did. Side. And prosecution got mad at me. So I'm not going to let this stand. So in some states, the judge can act as the 13th juror and effectively tie the jury up and make it a mistrial, which is what I did. I decided I'm not going to let that ride. Everybody acknowledged there was plenty of reasonable doubt, but they didn't follow the law. Now you take it up, but I'm setting the verdict aside. See, that happens, and that's one of the juries out of the 5. And then the other one, you think they rode the short bus to school because they must be mentally retarded or something's wrong with them.
So 60% of the time you have the ability to get a good, competent jury, and then if you get that, 75% of that you have a chance of getting the acquittal. That's pretty good. Those are pretty good
I'd
odds.
say they're pretty good odds, and a lot of people would be walking today if they had the courage to just step up and let them see if they could get the strikeout, rather than I'm gonna just let things go by and make it easy and cop out.
Wow. So
See, the unfortunate thing with American law is there is a case the U.S. Supreme Court decided quite a bit of time ago called Alford versus North Carolina. It says a completely innocent person can legitimately plead guilty if he thinks it's his best option to do so, and he enters that plea of guilty freely and voluntarily, understandingly, knowingly, advisedly, and intelligently, and the state has a reasonable factual basis upon which to proceed other than his plea of guilty.
that's where we got the Alford plea.
Alford versus North Carolina, early
Yeah.
1960s.
Is that different from the nolo contendere?
Yes, it is. Nolo contendere usually comes up when there is a pending civil action. What
Gotcha.
happens in American law is if you enter a plea of guilty in a criminal case, that plea of guilty can be used in a civil case as primary evidence. In other words, did you drive recklessly? I plead guilty. Then, if that's part of the suit against you in a civil matter, they can introduce that guilty plea. If you got
Yeah, and then you're
found guilty, they can't use that. And what people do is they enter a no contest, which is nolo contendere, and that means I'm not contesting it, so they can't introduce it in a civil trial. And most of the time, when nolo contendere or no contest comes up, somebody wants to get the criminal matter out of the way. There's a deal worked up, a plea bargain, and what happens is they do not want to confess the event for purposes of avoiding civil liability.
interesting. I appreciate that analysis. I love being in these spaces with you. So, getting back to the original point, the reason I brought that up is, would you say there's enough um, information, or there's enough reason or motive for Israel to take out Kennedy so they can continue their operations, get our nuclear secrets, and then establish themselves for where they are right now in the Middle East?
Well, that's already been done. One of the problems that Kennedy was upset about was the fact that a lot of U.S. pilots, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, were on extended furloughs to Israel and were flying combat missions for Israel, and was causing a severe diplomatic problem for the United States. That manifested when the American electronics um, detection spy ship was sunk in 1967, and most of the 14 aircraft that were being flown that attacked it were being flown by, I think 10 out of the 14 were being flown by U.S. pilots on furlough who should have been tried for treason.
That's insane.
Um. Okay, I wanna get to Nora,
Hi
and then we
everyone.
can go. We got and then it's like open. Then it could be an open discussion. But anybody want to come up, you can do so. It's still open mic. Hey, Nora.
Hi, beautiful Dana. Hi, the honorable judge. I'm going to dumb this down because I mean, some of these big terms, I'm like, oh my God. But from what I'm gathering in my research and what I've read in the documents, it appears that there's been a little bit of this being alluded to CIA involvement. Also, I saw a document that said CIA is not against the documents being released, but going back to the whole Israel thing, Israel was highlighted as saying that they had objections to it. But I mean, I think it's also more simpler than that. I think the mafia was involved. I mean, the fact that Lee Harvey Oswald was taken out the very next morning by someone with mafia ties to me speaks volumes. I mean, I think it was a combination of people that got together and wanted to take him out. I mean, Judge, do you lived during that time. Did America, like as citizens, did everyone trust what they were being told? Why was this not questioned more, or was it? And it's just now being pushed now by conspiracy theory generation that we live in.
Well, here, when I looked at the material 25 years ago, what I saw that really stood out is the FBI was spending too much time on things that had no business spending time on,
Hmm.
and taking care of business it should have had close to hand. And a great deal of what was concealed in the investigations that all of the commissions relied upon the FBI to conduct was hiding the fact of their incompetence to do what they claimed they could do.
That makes sense. So basically, it appears that they should have dug more deep, on the Russia connection, the mafia connection. They just overlooked it. I mean, it leads me to believe that the government wanted JFK dead at that point. I mean, I saw Biden's name was even mentioned, that JFK wrote him a letter in the documents released and said he was a traitor. So, I mean, there was a lot of names like who could have done it, why they did it. To me, it all points to the government wanted him gone. I mean, and that's why they're not releasing these documents, or they didn't release it till today.
Well, they did release them. If you listen to what I said, the documents were released in 1991. There was a congressional act that was signed into law by President Herbert Walker Bush and enabled by an executive order he signed. And then President Bill Clinton issued another executive order to back that up in 1992. So those documents were available at a facility on 14th Street in downtown DC, which I had visited on more than one occasion. And that stayed open until the early part of 2003 or 4, I think it was. And then they closed it up and moved all of the materials to a repository in Bethesda, Maryland. So what Trump has done is simply published it rather than just made it available.
Okay, got it. Well, thank you, Judge. This is the best live space I've been on all night, so I appreciate your knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. The black, and then I'm gonna swing back to anti woke. Go ahead, the black.
What's going on, Dana? Judge,
How are you?
how doing today?
Okay.
Uh, Down here in Dallas, we don't talk about JFK at all. There's like a subject that don't nobody touch on. But what you said about uh Billy Soul, the dude who body wasn't in the grave. That's a funny story that a lot of people uh forget to bring up when they talk about the JFK murders, and also
That
the
was not known. That's not published in any of that material. That's from the Dallas Police Department and their investigation 1999 and 2000.
you know the police chief during that time period was one of the motor car drivers for JFK during that day.
Uh,
Yeah, he later on became the police chief during the early '90s when the crack epidemic came to Dallas, and he was
well,
somewhat.
that's 30 years after the fact. A lot can change in that. But the main point everybody needs to pay attention to is it shows you how your government works behind closed doors and what goes on. And some of it you need to pay careful attention to because sometimes there is, let's shall we say, a convenient homicide that the government is behind. I call your attention to a recent case during the Obama administration wherein a grandfather and a father filed an injunction in federal court. I got a copy of the transcript. The Obama administration took the position that a certain born in America, Native American citizen, and his son, born in America, in fact, both of them were born in Detroit, Michigan, and the grandfather, who was the plaintiff, was an American citizen. What happened is the Obama administration admitted that he had never committed a crime that he could have been charged with in the United States, but they intended to kill him because Obama thought he was a threat to national security, even if he could not be charged with any crime. So when the feds were asked to cite their authority, they said it was something more fundamental than the Constitution. And the judge asked them what? And they said, well, it's just inherent in any government's power. So the judge pointedly said, doesn't it say as part of the Fifth Amendment, no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law? So you're trying to tell me that the president, on his own initiative, can deprive somebody of his life without any trial or any indictment or any charge? And if the person just leaves the country, he's subject to being executed. It says pause, and then government representative said, well, not quite, Your Honor. And the judge comes back, what do you mean not quite? Well, Your Honor, he doesn't have to leave the United States. This can happen domestically. The judge says, wait a minute, are you trying to tell the court that it is your position that the president can order somebody murdered in America? And they say, well, I wouldn't call it murdered, but he can have them neutralized or eliminated. Well, killed, yes, I suppose you could say that. Said, well, what happens if the police try to intervene and one of the cops gets shot? Said, well, the president has pardon power. And then the judge comes back, well, who's going to pardon the president? He's sworn to uphold the law, and he cannot deprive someone of his life without due process of law. Said, well, I'm ordering an injunction. And he gave him 6 weeks to brief it and come back, and they killed the guy anyway by drone, and then killed his son 4.5 hours later.
That was Nori al-Maliki, right? And it was in a Yemeni cafe.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
And it's so funny, Judge, because you have all these idiot leftists who don't even know about this. A lot of them saying, "Oh, we don't have kings in America." Really, we don't have kings? I mean, it's the closest thing you can come to a king. He's doing it extrajudiciously without any judicial review or any due process.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get to anti-woke. You had your hand up for a minute, and then after you, I have like couple questions from YouTube.
Yeah, thanks for letting me speak. This is going to be real quick. The gentleman before was asking about the Israel involvement. I put in the comment one of the documents I found with Israel intelligence. The other thing is, I'm just going to leave with this. So in all my research, I think there's a lot of people out there saying, is it the CIA? Is it the FBI? I think that a lot of people fail to realize that we have foreign agents involved in all aspects, and it becomes really apparent that there's a lot of people and other countries involved in all this stuff for a long time. So, depending on one agency, I'm more interested in who's at the top of the chain. And for my research, it always seems to come to Israel, which begs the question: why are we allies with these people? They commit heinous acts, the war crimes, and we're still, which is making me nervous with Trump, doing their bidding. Anyway, thank you for letting me speak. I'll leave you that.
Appreciate it.
Dana, Judge has spoken on that. I asked him specifically the same question because it's very curious to me. And Judge, correct me if I'm wrong. You said that basically because of our ability to train our pilot head, we tolerate this stuff.
Oh wait, Peter, your phone was going in and out.
I heard the question, but in answer to your question, and what I was expanding on my remarks, there is a utility for our cooperation with Israel. One, there is a triumvirate of the Saudis, Egypt, and Israel, and that's how we get our intelligence. It develops that the previous head of Saudi Arabia's counterintelligence was born in the United States, American citizen whose father was born in the United States, whose son was born in the U.S., and he could vote in any election. He didn't need to be naturalized, but he was head of Saudi counterintelligence and in line to be the next high king of Saudi Arabia. So we had that going for us. They collaborated with Israel, and Israel was collaborating with Egypt after Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin in 1976, cooperating with Jimmy Carter, came up with a treaty amongst themselves, or at least Israel and Egypt. So that was our end to being able to get intelligence on the Middle East. Also, a lot of our weapons were questioned, particularly our tanks. Our M48 and M60s were looked at as drastically inferior to the Soviet T-62, T-64, and T-55, T-54 series. But when Israel got to slugging it out with the Arabs using the Soviet equipment, it was discovered that our tanks were much superior, counter to what we had been talking about. And also, a lot of things got developed. For example, we had a hydraulic fluid that was used in the systems of our tanks. They called it cherry juice because it was a clear but dark red color. And when a tank got hit, if one of the hydraulic lines got ruptured, it formed the highly explosive mist, which was very incendiary. So we learned that that stuff doesn't work and replaced it in our tanks right around 1970 as a result of the experience of our tanks going against the Soviet material in a real live shoot 'em up. Stuff like that was going on. Like, does this stuff actually work? And what does work? What does not work? What actually happens when they get on the battlefield? Do we have to worry about that? These are the things that are supposed to be the utilities that are brought on by our collaboration with Israel. Plus, they have a very effective lobby. I think the Census Bureau says slightly less than 2% of the American public states that they are Jewish as an ethnic group, but they have an enormous control because they involve themselves in academia, law, finance, and science. So they just do what they perceive to be in their best interest, and the rest of us get drug along. Sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but it's an excellent example of how you work politics.
Right. Real quick, I want to ask a question. It's two questions on YouTube, but so the first one is related to JFK. The second one is not, so I'll ask the second one afterwards. So Big Daddy Vic asks, what happened to the guy who assassinated Kennedy, and what happened to the guy who assassinated King, and where are they now? Well, they're both dead, but okay. But what happened to them? Judge.
I didn't hear what you said. You said
Oh,
you mentioned the name. Who are we talking about?
okay. No. Someone on YouTube, his name Big Daddy Vic on YouTube. The question he asks: what happened to the guy who assassinated Kennedy, and what happened to the guy who assassinated King, and where are they now?
Well, James Earl Ray did not assassinate King. It was a two-man hit team recruited from the Marine Corps Sniper School in Quantico, Virginia that did, and the shot came from the fire station, not from the flop house or the bushes. Lee Harvey Oswald got shot to death, if that's who actually did it. I was saying earlier, and let's see if I get knocked off this time, was the Dallas police had the actual vehicle that Kennedy was riding in when he got murdered. There is a clean caliber sized bullet hole in the front windshield. According to the magic bullet theory, the bullet goes through Kennedy, the governor, and goes out the windshield from back to front. Well, when they, based on some information I provided to them, tested the same material, they found that if a shot was fired from the rear of the vehicle toward the front and it hits the windshield, that type would bulge out, consistent with what happens if someone's in an accident and their head hits the windshield. On the other hand, if the bullet is fired from the front of the vehicle, it'll put a nice clean hole in the window that's the size of the bullet. If you line that hole up and where the bullet supposedly exits Kennedy, but they say now entered Kennedy, you will find that it lines up precisely with a position where at the time of the assassination there was a boxcar parked on that railway bridge. When the car is approaching the bridge at the speed it was going, by stopwatch we timed it, there's a 5-second window when it's coming straight on. The effect for anybody that is shooting a rifle from the bridge is a stationary target that drops from about 70 yards down to about 30, which is point blank range, can't miss. And then what happens is, as you are facing where the car is coming from the bridge, it starts dropping down because the road goes down and it goes to your left. That is a much easier shot than what happens from the Eyrie. If you take the shot from the Eyrie, it's interesting because it is a downward angle, a severe downward angle. You have to compensate by aiming under your target instead of directly on it, and also factor in lead. The process is much akin to accurately hitting somebody from a moving helicopter who's standing on the ground. A lot of people can't do that without a whole lot of practice. So the question poses itself, where did Oswald get the practice, since this wasn't necessarily done at the time because they had not invented helicopter gunships. And the idea of using helicopters for armed assault in a military fashion was a totally new idea that hadn't even been tried.
All right. And the second question was, Judge Joe, what are your thoughts on Justice Roberts' comments today?
He made the comments. He's just trying to point something out that seems to be overlooked. The only court that's mentioned in the Constitution is the Supreme Court, and they have Article 3 courts, wherein the Constitution says such lesser courts as may be established by Congress shall, et cetera, have certain powers. They are the preliminary courts where
Do
the
you know
facts are
what are
established.
you referencing?
I'm
Do you
talking about he's trying to defend this when
defend what?
he was talking about people talking about the judge needed impeachment.
Right. He
He
said
was,
not an appropriate
yeah,
wait,
he
Robert says
was,
impeaching judges not an appropriate response to
yeah, it's not.
disagreement.
I'm telling you why it's not. Because
Okay.
all they do is they put in the beginnings of a case. A case just can't jump from point A to point D. It has to go through B, C, and D. So what happens is these Section 3 courts are the preliminary courts. They are the district court. That's a trial court where the facts are established, the witnesses are sworn and tested, and the issues are posed. The circuit court deals with the first level of appeal. That's usually by either a 3-member panel or a 9-member panel. And then, if the U.S. Supreme Court says it's important enough, they'll grant what they call certiorari, which is a certification that it's worth us hearing. And it goes to the Supreme Court. Now, for those who are all up in arms about we need to impeach these judges for overruling Trump, well, let's talk about some realities. Just a year and a half ago, a bunch of us who support the Second Amendment were very glad when a district court judge in Texas enjoined the Biden TF from come up with a ridiculous reversal of their ruling on uh, braces for pistols. That was something set up to deal with the needs of handicapped veterans who were disabled as a result of their service or anybody else in that status. So we sometimes applaud it when a district court judge acts against the chief executive. And sometimes when it's not in our interest, we go through all Supreme Court here is the case, and it is not unusual to take the case so they can resolve what the law is supposed to be. Now, those of us who support the Second Amendment have been very happy with the fact that district courts have overruled the president at the time, either Obama or Biden, and said, no, you can't trample on people's Second Amendment rights like that. So that's part of the collateral consequence of us having the rules that we have. There are some downsides to it and there are some positives to it. So what Roberts was talking about was it is inappropriate to call for the impeachment of a judge who hasn't even ruled on the matter right now. We don't know what he's going to rule. He's just saying these guys have not had their due process of law, so it is premature to try and deport them. And plus, you don't know that everybody you're trying to deport is deportable. So let's have the hearings first and determine whether or not you can do this. See, he might agree with and say, okay, after we've had the hearings, yeah, you can take them out of here. And see, that doesn't mean you have to let them go back into society. You can hold them at Guantanamo in the detention facility they've got down there. You can hold them in a maximum security prison. You can open up Alcatraz and put them in there. You can hold them in Leavenworth. You can do all of these things. It's not a ruling that you have to let them go. It's just you can't deport them right now without having due process of law. And that little thing in the 14th Amendment that says subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, translated, that means where the laws of the United States apply. And where the laws of the United States apply, whether or not the person's a citizen, our laws demand due process of law on the federal level under the Fifth Amendment, and under the 14th Amendment, that's applied to the states. So that's all that was called on by the
Right.
trial judge, even though I don't personally agree with his ruling.
Right.
I think he had the authority to do it, and there's no reason to start hollering about impeachment. So I agree with Roberts and what he said.
Right. All right, so I want to get to the Black and Uncle Elroy, and anybody want to request to come up, please do so. It's still open mic, and of course the headline topic is JFK files. And you two people, if you have a question, please put Q. I don't want to have to scan through the comments to figure out if it's a question or not. So just put Q, then your question. Go ahead, the Black.
Uncle Arrow can go before me. If that's all
Okay.
right.
Oh, you went already, right?
Yeah, I
Oh,
want.
I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. Uncle
And
Elroy, go
then
ahead.
I want. Then I
You go
want to
ahead,
ask something
man.
else anyway.
You go ahead. Go ahead. I thought I had a good question, but I'm tongue twisted right now, so I'm trying to figure out how to word it anyway. So you go ahead. Sorry about that.
No, no problem.
Oh, one further thing. It's not that the judge ruled that the 1798 law that Trump was relying upon was invalid. It's just that before you can apply it, anybody subject to American law has to be granted their due process rights.
Well, let me interject this because it was a organization, one of these nonprofit organizations. They filed a lawsuit against Venezuelan, certain like 5 Venezuelan illegal migrants being deported, and that's why the judge halted the deportation because of a lawsuit that was
Yeah,
filed.
well, they
It
were
was
challenged,
challenges, yes,
and
yes.
effectively they could have filed a habeas corpus petition. In
Okay.
other words, show your authority. And the process is, okay, these are illegals. They come under the 1798 Act. Yeah, but we do not have a declaration of war at the moment that obviates the need for due process.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have due process to show that the law in question applies to them, because under American law, if somebody makes an accusation against you, they have to prove it. And until they prove it, you haven't done it. So the Trump administration is saying these guys did X, Y, and Z. And what the judge said, well, we haven't had any test of that accusation.
Right.
It's just an accusation at this point.
Okay.
And there is no declared war.
Chad,
Yes.
hi.
Hey, I just got a quick question. I wonder why the JFK files all of a sudden just leaped right over the Epstein files when they were supposed to be released, and why why are they being so protected? Does Judge Joe Brown? Do you think that is protecting somebody or people in our Congress and Senate, that it goes way deep, and that they really trying to protect people, or what? I don't understand how all of a sudden the JFK files just leap.
Shit, I'm hitting the wrong button. Hold that thought. You gotta hold that thought, Chad. The judge had to drop down.
They don't like the judge today, I see.
Well, I think he's moving around too much in his house.
I heard the question. How does the JFK file get out there? As I said 4 times this evening, they actually had all of those files available back in 1991. That was a congressional act that mandated that every federal agency that did any investigation, has any correspondence or evidence pertaining to any of a set number of assassinations or assassination attempts, were to forward the information to this repository that was located on 14th Street in downtown DC. About 2004, that closed up, and all of the information was transported to a repository in Bethesda, Maryland. Now, what Trump has done is published it rather than just made it available for retrieval upon request. And as I said, it's a lot. Dana looked at it, it's 80-some thousand pages. And if you don't have any clues and you aren't correlating what's in those files with other information, it won't make much sense to you.
Go ahead, Chad. Did you want to finish up with the questions or your statement? You're muted, Chad. Unmute.
I was just wondering why the JFK files leaked over the Epstein files, that they were supposed to been released. And I was just, because I'm wondering, is there a whole bunch of people that they're trying to protect us in our government?
I misunderstood your question. Let me tell you what the real deal is. The Epstein files.
Do it, Judge. I love you, buddy.
The Epstein files don't make a hill's worth of business to anything. They incriminate certain persons, but in the scheme of things, so what? It's child molestation. Some people need to go to jail, but when you're talking about comparing what's happening with assassination attempts and executions, you're talking about fundamental alteration of policy. The Epstein files are very embarrassing to certain people, but they aren't going to change what happens to you tomorrow. They aren't going to change the way the government operates. They're not going to change government policy. They just might out of certain few individuals. Now, Epstein is dead, so the main perpetrator, you can't dig him up and execute him, and you can't put the corpse in a penitentiary. So, in legal parlance, the case against Epstein has been, quote, abated by death, unquote. So what we are all concerned about is a what if matter. Now, the Epstein files are, in terms of government business, practically inconsequential. It's just embarrassing to certain people's careers. Which, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to publish it. That's probably what's going on with Diddy. Perhaps an unsuccessful candidate for president was implicated in the 15 years of recorded debauchery that Diddy seems to have assembled to protect himself from the entertainment industry. I mean, that's the same thing, and nobody mentions the consequences or the significance of or the possibilities inherent in that situation.
Okay. Oh, anything else, Chad?
Oh, that's it. I appreciate it. Thanks for your thing. It's just real quickly. It seems like the CIA uses the same old playbook. Suicide, fake death, blah blah blah.
Oh yeah. See, killing somebody is not legal under American law. I don't care whether you're CIA, NSA, or anything else. It's not legal. And when they do stuff, unlike in Russia or China or Israel, they have to cover the person who did it because technically the person broke the law. And what goes on is they make a careful effort to keep the president insulated so it does not look like he gave the order. Why? So he can pardon somebody if they get caught. And because of sort of a gentleman's agreement with American domestic law enforcement, if the CIA, NSA, naval intelligence, or something like that is involved with something, they look the other way because they know there's not going to be a case. And oftentimes, what happens is you have evidence that would be damning, but you can't afford to present the evidence in an open and speedy public trial because you don't want the public or your enemies to know what the hell was going on. It's too confidential. So they drop the charges and just deport somebody.
Thank you.
So, okay, we have a couple questions from
I
YouTube.
have just one little thing.
Oh,
People haven't heard this. I had in my court 35 years ago a case where four assassins were sent over from South Africa. 7 Americans discovered diamonds in a lode that they had mined and got permission from the government, paid the mine fees, and were going to mine the diamonds. Oppenheimer de Beers gave them an offer that they couldn't refuse. They refused, so they sent 4 assassins over. When the assassins had killed 4 of the 7 outright and had shot the 5th person several times and were getting ready to put a bullet in his head, the local police were next door answering a domestic disturbance call, rushed in with guns drawn. The assassins calmly threw down the weapons and basically admitted to doing what they did. Well, we'd gone through several weeks of trial when the whole thing broke down because the State Department under George Herbert Walker Bush declared them to have diplomatic immunity, removed them from our county jail, and sent them back to South Africa, la-di-da. So this
oh,
happens.
all right. So the number one MAGA general on YouTube says, how much do you think these assassinations were paid via U.S. aid money and the intel community and CIA acted them out? Like what happened to JFK and now Trump? So how much do you think these assassinations were paid via U.S. aid money?
It depends on who did the assassination. As I said, it looks like what was going on to a great extent is the FBI was involved in blackmailing too many people and not enough involved in its portfolio of investigations to prevent certain types of criminality and wrongdoing inside the United States. The CIA has, as part of its portfolio, the responsibility for gathering and digesting information on the international level and perhaps conducting international operations. The FBI has the portfolio to resist, deter, apprehend, and prevent internal espionage by foreign entities. The FBI was not doing that. So, what I read when I went through a lot of this stuff, particularly in the James Earl Ray King matter, and also with the JFK matter, was the FBI was covering for its ineptitude and general incompetence.
Okay. One more question, and then I'm gonna go to Uncle Elroy. Another question on YouTube. And yes, and again, if you have a question on YouTube, just put Q in your question. Loyalty Selassie says, does the judge know anything about El Selassie visiting JFK? That was the emperor of Ethiopia. He did come and visit the White House and met
Ali
JFK.
Selassie.
Yeah, Ali. Is it Ali
Haile.
or Hell? Hell Selassie?
Haile.
Selassie?
Like Holly.
Haile.
Haile.
Haile Selassie?
Haile Selassie.
Haile Selassie. Okay. So does the judge know anything about Haile Selassie visiting JFK? That story, I guess.
Well, he may have. I'm not sure, but Haile Selassie at one time was an international celebrity. He was the last living official emperor. So technically, he outranked, in the scheme of things, the Queen of England.
Oh. And it hasn't been
Been
another emperor since.
Nope.
I guess they saw the
Hey, and
head.
Judge, real quick, what was the name of that case, Judge, with the assassins that came to kill the guys from that found the diamonds?
I don't rightly remember the names of the four defendants. There were four of them, and they were Dutch based names. And it's been 35 years ago, and I'm not looking at any records right now. And I did not take it upon myself to go copy the court records so I would have them 35 years later.
Well, can that be researched to be found, I guess?
I guess
If
Yeah,
if
would it be
anybody.
on
you,
Pacer?
I guess if you, I don't think it'd be on Pacer, but if you went through the clerk's office, you could just manually go through, since this stuff
Yeah.
wouldn't be computerized. This is 35 years ago, late 1990. You could go through the indictments assigned to my court and find four defendants with Dutch based names in there charged with first degree murder and look up what's going on. And if you paid a fee, you might be able to get a copy of the transcript.
And real quick before I go to Elroy, let me just this is really a question. So, an observation. So it's like I was doing this research in college on public policies in Jersey City, and there you're talking about going back to the 50s and the 60s and maybe even some 70s. You're not gonna they're not gonna have those at in City Hall. We have to go to the library, to the archive section, and the librarian, who was very knowledgeable, took us to a special section in the archives where where City Hall sent those old public policies, and they archived it there. So my question is, I guess in legal terms, when we talk about these old cases, whether they high profile in different cities and states, I guess, is there some type of place or system or thing that people can maybe research old archives? And you kind of answered that. So, because old cases, you talk about 30 years ago, most likely you can't just Google it. There would be archives somewhere, correct? Judge, can you hear me? Oh my God. Can anybody hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I can hear you.
I hear you.
Okay. Well, I don't know if he's talking because we can't hear him.
Hey, when you get a chance, would you ask Ju- Judge Brown what he thinks about the Jeffrey MacDonald case from Fort Bragg? He's still serving prison time, and Ted Gunderson done the whole investigation into it all, and he didn't
Well,
supposedly.
Chad, you gotta ask him that. Honey, I ain't gonna remember that. Just ask him when he
Oh,
come back up. But I have to go. I gotta go to when he comes back up. I'm gonna go to Uncle Elroy, and then you can ask him that. He dropped down,
okay.
and he'll come back up. Something must have happened, and I'm not gonna repeat with the archives because I'll just ask him myself later. But um I don't know if somebody called him or if his phone is acting up, and I think he most likely needs to update his cell phone. I don't know, but he should be popping up um any minute. But until he come up, so I've been looking what Mario on X, he's been like tweeting, pages the um of the thing of the JFK files.
Is it heavily redacted? I haven't even seen anything yet.
Yeah, yeah, I've been looking at that too.
So I can interrupt you.
Yeah, and he was saying how Vietnamese officers begged Kennedy to remove President Diem. I guess he was the president of Vietnam during that time. I don't know. I don't know what happened with the judge.
That could be another good reason, right? Like motive why they would take him out, because he was trying to not have the war happen, and then taking him out, then we went in there and did what we did.
Yeah, I heard that
You
was
know,
a reason why they wanted to get rid of him because he wanted to end the Vietnam War.
That caters to my question, sort of. It's like if if he was taken out for doing something that ideally is against the plan, it's like who is in charge if he's not, and who's making the plan, and how do we know they have our best interest in mind, and what's their morality? Like, where's this moral standard? Do they even have one?
well,
You know what
they
I mean?
definitely don't, Uncle Elroy, right? I mean, we could
Yeah.
figure that out just by what's been going on in the country and what Edward Snowden exposed.
And that's
And
a
then
scary
connect.
thought.
Yeah, bro.
But
I mean, yeah,
wasn't that the plan at first anyway? Well, LBJ plan at first. The reason why he decided to be vice president and give up his Texas governor seat, because in his acceptance speech he did say he liked the chances of him becoming president by
Right.
assassination.
Seemed like a failsafe almost. Keep JFK
And
in
I've been
line.
looking for that film for the longest.
Now I know what you're
Uh,
talking about. Yeah.
that would be a great project too, Dana. What you just suggested, to go to like different cities where you have these archives and digitize them, right? So you don't have to go use like fish or microfilm like back in the day, and you can have access to all that stuff.
but isn't that what the Internet Archives was supposed to do before
That's what it was
they got
built
sued
for.
by all these book companies during
Yeah.
COVID?
Yeah, the black it is, but
That's what they was trying to
apparently
stop from
there are
doing.
so many that we don't have, right? And that they are in some of these libraries and these records bureaus. It just takes a matter of time to do it, and I think that would be a worthwhile project because it helps to color and expose what these agencies do. And like, it's funny when I hear people like, "Oh, well, that was 50 years ago. They would never keep doing that." Like, like it's hilarious, man.
But there's a perspective to that as well. It's like, what if they're hiding stuff from us that would
All right, so
outrage
I
us?
see the judge, but
Sorry,
we
God.
can't hear Judge. I don't think Judge you can. We can't hear you.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me now?
Okay,
I
yes.
dropped
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
They cut me off
And
again. Nobody
Yeah, you.
called.
I didn't bring you up as speaker. You just popped right back in as speaker. Did somebody call you?
He
No.
been posting the whole time.
Huh?
No, I saw him drop down, and now
Right.
it's on my screen. It's showing as a listener. He just updated to speaker right now.
they did the same thing when I got dropped from it. It'll let you speak when you first get in, and then it'll kick you out from speaking. You got to do requests. That's it.
I don't know. Well, wasn't Spaces hacked the other day anyway?
Yeah, it was.
All right. So what? All right. Um. Oh, who? Uncle Elroy. Go
All
ahead.
right. Yeah. No, I think we touched on it a little bit, but I was saying it seems like this JFK assassination is a situation where a president went against the plan for the powers that be, whoever it may be. But it beckons the question then who is in charge and who's the head of our country that discerns our decision making, and what moral standard, if any, do they have? Like, is that something we should be worried about as people of this country? It's like, are they looking out for our best interests? How can we know when everything's so suppressed like this?
All right. I don't know if the judge is saying anything. We can't even hear you now anymore.
Yeah, I don't hear him
I'm
at
not
all.
saying anything.
But he's a
Oh.
co-host now. He's a co-host now. Back to
Okay.
co-host.
So did you hear what Uncle Elroy
I
the
heard
question
I
was?
heard what was said.
Yeah, sorry. It's a tough question because it takes a lot. Sorry.
Hmm.
Are you going to answer the question?
What was the question? I thought it was a comment.
No, I'm asking basically the question simply put is we as people of America, like the people living here that, wish well for this country, where do we find who's in charge if not the president? And how do we know that they have our best interests in mind and some sort of moral standard, if any?
Well, supposedly if you got accurate First Amendment reporting, you would have this guy's track record to look at, and based on what he had done, make an assessment of whether he would be effective if you put him in a position to do more or do the same thing. But we don't focus on that now. We focus on gossip column stuff that the National Enquirer, Globe, or Star would be interested in. We have inquiring minds.
Yeah. Well, the things that outrage or cause reactions are more important than the facts for people. And
Yeah.
it's dangerous because the fear comes of the society falling apart, just like ancient Rome or any other big empire, which is scary, sort of.
Like, for
I mean,
example, Kennedy,
God.
JFK, we're talking about his assassination. 2 weeks before he got assassinated in a social studies class in high school, we were going over the fact that this youngest president in American history, JFK, had the lowest ratings of any American president since they'd been keeping track of that for most of the 20th century. And now he's looked at as a deity. He's been deified, sainted, but at the time his ratings were horribly low. It's all in the name of things. Martin Luther King has a national holiday named after him, but at the time he was passe because everybody was becoming, well, not everybody, but many were becoming militant rather than nonviolent.
I was just about to say that. It
Yeah.
do you
Yeah. I had the
think
same thought.
that was kind of like a way to put a wedge between the Nation of Islam? Because I've been looking at some files on how they kind of infiltrated that, and they seen that some people was already jealous of Malcolm X, so they just used that to kind of like push a even more wedge in between them, and that's somewhat why
Well,
they
yeah,
knocked him
that's a
off first.
possibility. That's a possibility.
I have another question from YouTube, and then I'm gonna go to Cheryl Girl. 1 second. So Temperance on YouTube says, off topic, has the judge heard about the twin men who were found shot to death recently in North Georgia?
And they was saying,
Maybe, but why is it relevant?
I don't know. He just wanted to know if you heard
I know
it.
I may have, I don't recall. See, crime was my business for 50 years. So I'm kind of like an undertaker or somebody that works in an emergency room in a hospital. When's the last time you saw blood?
Okay. All right.
Can I?
Cheryl Girl.
Sorry.
Yes, I wanted to comment on the fact that I believe that Kennedy wanted to end the Federal Reserve and go on the gold standard. Thus, the powers that be, the big money guys, obviously would want to off him. What do you think, Judge?
I don't. Let me tell you what the real problem is with the gold standard. There's a finite amount of gold that has been mined and refined, okay?
Okay.
And what happens is if people earn, let's say, the stock market, and you invest, say, $10 and it becomes worth 15, you can't get the $5 extra because there's not enough gold to pay it. So you have to get off the gold standard because it's self-limiting. And the fact of the matter is if the nation's powerful enough, it could declare ice cream sticks could be valid currency and it would be valid. You'd have to do something to prevent counterfeiting, but the money situation works out in basic essence for this reason. The dollar, well, there are two reasons. The material that a dollar is printed on is rarer than gold. And second thing, we have the United States Navy with Ohio class ballistic missile submarines hiding under the Arctic ice that basically blackmailed the rest of the world into compliance with our economic dictates. So we
Okay.
are the most powerful nation. What we decree to be money is money, and there's only one national entity that tries to use the gold standard, and that's one of the Middle Eastern countries. I forget the name right now. It may be Yemen or something like that. But there's not enough gold to go around. That's what happened with the stock market crash in 1929. They started talking about buying on margin. What the margin meant is that's the difference between the available gold to back it up and what the transaction was supposed to be worth in terms of dollars earned or dollars it was worth. And when they started calling in the margins, they couldn't do it because the gold supply didn't work. You might want to get into The Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
which is a political satire because the gold followed the yellow brick road. That's the gold pathway. The governor of Kansas was a zealous advocate for keeping the gold standard. The Tin Man was a real live political figure. The Cowardly Lion was a real live political figure. The the Scarecrow was one, and it went on from there. So read Wizard of Oz, the books, and you might get
Okay.
a good dissertation on why we needed to get off the gold standard. It sounds good, but the problem is that, well, let's put it this way. When we had that problem with Goldman Sachs, Smith, Barney, whatever, and there was that $700 billion bailout to
Mm.
Goldman Sachs et al. Under the Bush administration, and then, well, 581 under the Obama administration, 500 billion under the Bush administration. They also supposedly loaned them gold to back up what they had, but they sold the gold looking at the high prices for the stuff. They knew that the sale of gold would drop the stuff in price so they could buy back the amount of gold for a drastically reduced price and make a huge profit. The problem is the gold went into people's vaults, backyards, and jewelry, and it will take 25, 30 years for the gold to be mined to replace what Goldman Sachs, Smith, Barney et al. Pilfered from the U.S. government.
Really? That's incredible. Thank you.
Okay.
Deborah, hi.
Hi, everybody. This is a
Hello.
great education. I'm falling asleep. I didn't have
Oh, wait
coffee.
1 second, Deborah.
Okay.
Halabel on YouTube said I jumped his question. Did you put a Q? Where is your question? Yeah, I have to scroll up. What is your question, Halamel? Halamel on YouTube, put your question back in a comment and make sure you put a Q so I can grab it.
Dana,
That's
there's a couple people asking if this is going to be recorded as well, if you are recording it and if you're going to
actually,
upload
I'm
it.
not recording it. However, I am on YouTube at the real Judge Joe Brown 23, and I will drop the link to to this YouTube video under space when it ends, so you guys could listen to it then. Listen to it on YouTube. So yeah. What I said? Oh, go ahead, Deborah.
So I had a couple questions for the judge. So your Wizard of Oz theory, where does Dorothy fall into play? And then with the JFK scenario, there's I haven't been listening since the beginning, but there was the CIA and then that whole Marilyn Monroe factor with, her being in an affair with both the president and the president's brother, and the talking secrets on the pillow. Do you want to speak on that, or
Well, I mean,
what do you
aside
think?
from the gossip angle, it was just right then we were getting into the height of the Cold War. Everybody was worried about what happened in Cuba when the Soviet Union under Khrushchev basically trapped us in something where we claimed we backed them down, but they got exactly what they wanted, which was getting intermediate range ballistic missiles removed from Eastern Europe. They got that. And Marilyn Monroe was just one of the people that was beginning to get, uh, sacrificed, the sacrificial lamb thing. in the name of national security. And from looking at what they have, there's an implication of the mafia, there's an implication of the Texas oil gangs or the oil consortiums or cartels. They've been engaging in some regular and frequent killing of people who were in the way. Uh, Based on some remarks I got delivered to me personally by LBJ's mistress, Marie Brown, no relation. She said that when they were at a party the night before Kennedy got to Texas, he came out of a meeting and he was acting troubled. And she said she asked him what was wrong. He said, they're talking something in there about that Catholic bastard won't be around after tomorrow. I don't know what it is, but it didn't sound good. So that would tend to indicate, since she was his confidant and a whole lot of stuff, and he had a child with her while he was in the White House, by the way, and with the White House secretary who was black. One of the White House secretaries, I met both of them. He looked just like LBJ, but one of them has a very, very slight tan. Anyhow, it is what it is. So that's just collateral damage.
All right, so we have the 2 hour mark.
Okay.
Anybody want to request? Did you have one? Anybody want to request to come up? Please do so now. It'll probably be and if not, guys who are already up here, it could be like an open forum, and we could just start winding it down.
Hey, I just wanted to ask Judge Brown if it's related to cover-ups and stuff. Ted Gunderson, I've listened to him talk about the Jeffrey MacDonald case, and that doctor, he's still in prison to this day. He's in his 80s, but supposedly killed his wife and kids and all that at Fort Bragg. And the lady came forward and told Ted Gunderson, she ended up later on that she did it. It was a cult thing, and he tried to get the case opened up, and he was told to leave it alone because it was going to open up a can of worms. And Ted said that what it was going on is that our soldiers that had got killed in war in Vietnam were being shipped back to America, and they was putting drugs in them. And then that little cult gang that went in on Dr. MacDonald and them, that they was the ones spreading the drugs up and down the East Coast, one of the groups, So they was afraid that if they started looking into them as the murderers, that it would uncover that they was the one also doing that distributing of the drugs. So I was just wondering if you thought that he might be really guilty, Judge Brown.
Well, there's a movie about that. Stars Russell Crowe as the prosecutor, who wound up being the defender of the character played by Denzel Washington, who was known as Bumpy, who came up with the scheme of bringing the drugs in with the bodies coming back from the Nam.
Is it Godfather Harlem?
Uh,
It's
that's not.
No, the story of Bumpy is, I mean, all of those movies are intertwined.
Yeah,
But
but I
wasn't
mean,
Ross
there's a
Perot
real
involved in some
case.
of that?
There's a
Wasn't
real
Ross Perot?
case where what happened is one of the New York prosecutors discovered that he went to a prize fight, and the character had been keeping a low profile, dressed in suits, and his Puerto Rican wife bought him some tricked out black and white fur coat and some stupid looking hat. She insisted he wear it. He wore it. And the prosecutor said, "Who is that guy over there? We don't know who he is." And they started checking him out, and they wound up prosecuting him. Well, he probably got impressed by some woman's testimony during his trial as to what horrors had been caused by the drug trade. So he wound up collaborating with the prosecutor, who wound up defending him after putting him in jail.
The movie is American Gangster, and I think Judge the lawyer's name was, I think, Richie Robbins.
That's it. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yep.
might tell a bit
And
about that story.
the Godfather of Harlem is pure work of fiction. They mix so much nonsense in with it. If you want to read a good book about what happened with the mafia and their connection with heroin during this era, check out Mafia Takedown, which talks about an informant being put in the Genovese crime family to take down all the upper level administration, and Chin Gigante. Gigante was instrumental in this time period, as well as the Colombos with the pizza connection case, where they would use the pizza places to import the heroin from the Sicilians.
But
Yeah,
Joe Brown, do you think that Dr. MacDonald is guilty by being a judge asking for your expertise?
McDonald. Which case was that?
Jeffrey MacDonald, the murder at Fort Bragg when he was the doctor there on base
I
in the
haven't.
70s, late 60s.
Wasn't he accused of doing mercy killings?
I have no idea. I just know the case that Ted Gunderson was talking about with his family getting killed, and a lot of things got covered up, and that man's still in prison to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for more than a half century, and homicide and crime has been essentially the majority of my business for that half century. To me, it's like discussing a case in an emergency room in another city with somebody that is a surgeon in a major hospital, or somebody getting killed in another city with a mortician who has a lot of those cases. Did you see blood? Yeah, see it all the time. Don't pay any attention to it. It's just part of what goes with the business.
So I want to get to Travis and Nancy. She came up, and I want to start winding it down. Go ahead, Travis.
I was just gonna get Brown. I was just gonna get Judge the name of American guy.
It's a lot of noise where you at, Travis. What did they say? I didn't even catch what he said.
I didn't hear him either.
I didn't either.
Yeah, you have a lot of noise and static where you at, Travis. All right, so I don't see anybody else requesting to come up, so I guess I don't know. We could give it another 15-20 minutes and just open forum.
I just want to say something about the microfiche. When I was a kid, one of my first jobs was working in the library. So they used to pay you minimum wage to research microfiche, and it's actually kind of fun to do it. But I'm sure, like in every city, there's buried documents in the microfiche and dusty rooms, and that would be a great job to have all of that digitized. I'm not sure how you would budget that. Maybe you would budget in the city budget or something, but it will probably take a long time, maybe 5 years, but it probably needs to be done quickly before AI takes over.
Yeah, Deborah, I agree.
So we
That
can
that would
have
be
all of
a
this.
great project for, like, somebody could even take the initiative, form a nonprofit for it, and like a
Yep.
historical society. I'm sure would there would be a lot of donors for that, because there's a wealth of information there, and we could draw a lot of conclusions about what these agencies were doing back then, and we could just draw an inference as to what they're doing now.
But you would be taking away dollars from a lawyer's $500 an hour, because they do that when the expensive firms, they actually dig deep to make sure they win their cases. But yeah, it's a great idea if somebody could pass it on up to Dodge.
So, Big Daddy, you just came up. Do you want to say something?
In reference to that case at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, that home is still boarded up. I got a question for the judge. Remove a judge from.
Well, hold your question because he just dropped down, so
okay.
he should be coming back up.
Okay, I'm gonna go mute.
Okay, I see him. All right, go ahead, Big Dad. Can you hear us, Judge?
I hear you. Send me the co-host thing.
Okay.
I just dropped off.
I just sent it to you, the co-host thing. All right, go ahead, Big Daddy.
Okay, I'm hearing that you can do other besides impeaching a judge. You can also remove a judge by simple majority.
Hello?
With the House.
Yeah, can you
Can
hear?
you hear the Can you hear the speaker, Judge?
I think when he comes co-host, that's when he has the issues. What is it?
Judge, have you updated your app recently?
No, he has not. I think that's what it is. He has to update his app.
It's very easy, Judge. If you just go to the Play Store, if you have an Android, or the App Store for Apple, you just click on it. It'll say update, and it'll update it for you in a few minutes. Not even a minute, pretty much.
But he may need to update his security because Apple has been dropping security updates. So it could be a problem with that too. So he needs to update the phone.
I hate Apple, Deborah. I'm an Android user.
Well, I have
Me too.
Android and I have an iPhone. So Android is a little bit more, way more flexible.
But it's easier to hack.
What, Android?
Yeah, if you don't have your security tight in the back, make sure all of your security's tight. It's easier to hack for people that use open source. Yep.
All right, Judge. I don't know what is going on. Every time when I make you co-host, that's when you have the audio issues.
Yeah, well, maybe somebody doesn't like what I have
I
to
think you
say.
need to update. You need to see if you need to update your app. Not now, but that could be the
I
issue.
mean, I've got it as updated as I can get it.
That's not how it works. You just
I just went into it yesterday. I had some time, so I went through and I found out, by the way, how to promote stuff.
No, I'm talking about when you go to your the apps and then you click on your X, it will let you know if it needs to be updated.
It says it's all the way updated,
Okay.
so I
All right.
check periodically
All right. I want
to
to
see.
go ahead, Big Daddy.
Judge, besides impeachment of a judge, is there another way to remove a judge? I'm hearing about the Good Behavior Act.
No,
Well,
good behavior means if they committed any crime. And you see, what happens is you have to rely upon humans because we don't have AI, nor do I think we want AI to replace humans in the loop. And the problem is that there are systems in place involving a lot of people that sort of vet what happens until it gets to a consensus at the top. That's what the Supreme Court is about. Below that, you have the circuit courts of appeal. And then below that, you have the district trial courts where the issues are formed or stated and the facts are determined. That's where you have trials, jury trials, or bench trials. And then what happens comes out of that goes to the the district court of appeals, circuit court rather. You have district courts, and then you have circuit courts of appeal, and then you have the Supreme Court, which is we'll listen to it if it seems important enough. We'll issue a certification. That's called certiorari in Latin, or cert commonly. We
so
call these lower courts Article 3 courts because the Constitution only specifies the Supreme Court, but under Article 3 allows the Congress to set up such lesser courts as may be deemed necessary.
Okay.
okay, because I was asking about with this judge situation there with the president. That's what I was asking.
Well, now, let me give you the counter to that. A couple of years ago, we got very happy if we supported the Second Amendment when a district court judge in Texas enjoined the Biden administration and ATF from enforcing this silly brace ban on pistols that was set up and had been long established. It was okay, but they said this is a way to control guns, so they came up with a little edict saying that braces were now illegal. So we applauded when that district court judge said, oh no, you're enjoined. But you see, that's the same process that we're complaining about with this deportation of people under the 1796 or 8 Act. And what's going on is it's not being said that the Act is not applicable. What's being said is there is an accusation that certain people fall under the Act, but when we have the application of American law anywhere, then the person accused is entitled to due process of law. So these people haven't had their due process of law. It's not saying you have to let them go and they can mingle back in the public. It just says you can't deport them until they've had their due process of law. You can put them in Guantanamo in Cuba. You can open up Alcatraz on the island in San Francisco Bay. You can put them in Leavenworth, or take an abandoned military base and put them in tents and put barbed wire around them. That's not saying you can't do that. It's just saying they have not had due process yet.
So, all right, as we wind it down now, damn, Mario, he tweaking all types of pages, but so who's behind JFK assassination? So on X now, there are a lot of people saying bottom line it was Israel, and because I heard this a couple months ago that the driver of the car is the one that turned and fired, just shot. However, they saying now on X it was Israel and the CIA, and they let me just read it. Israel, okay. The driver murdered JFK on behalf of Israel, who wanted nuclear weapons orchestrated by LBJ and George Bush, because George Bush was CIA as well. So Israel had something to do with it, and I guess they just wanted him out the picture, JFK. So is it fair?
I can't speak to that. It's possible. There are all kinds of alternative theories. All I can speak to is the likelihood of where the shots came from and some other things that are peripheral. Now, who did them, I don't know, but it does look
Okay.
definitely like the Texas oil mob was involved.
I don't think it was the mob. The mob doesn't have that.
I didn't say the mob, meaning mafia. The Texas
I
oil
don't think it was
mob, which
any
was
type of
something
mob.
totally
Texas
separate.
oil mob or Thai. I don't think it was no mob. Mobs don't have that type of reach to kill a
Well,
president.
here's what the thing was. Remember what I said about Dallas getting from the repository that stuff with Trott and the lawyers for Billy Saul Estes. Billy Saul Estes supplied a series of names as to people who were involved with the killing. When the Dallas detectives, toward the end of the 1990s, got the name, they were able to compare the known prints that were associated with that name with some identifiable prints on the rifle that was supposed to have shot Kennedy. When they did the analysis, the fingerprints belonged to this person. He was a known hitman for the Texas oil crew.
Mm-hmm.
And they were really high big business because they made more money than the mob. This was the oil industry in the United States and the international oil industry. There were billions of dollars involved in this. And that would have hooked up a whole lot of foreign connections. Remember, the world needs energy to run.
So here's my question, and can it be because we know the person who pulled the trigger apparently was a driver of the car, but it's so many.
That's new. There's nothing. I mean, that's not saying it doesn't go, but there's nothing in all of that stuff that would put any driver into the position to do
I
that.
think it
That's
was.
speculation. I mean, it can, and I know there's stuff
But there's
on
no
X
evidence
that
to
it
prove
is.
that that was the case.
None.
But
There's
listen,
no
okay, so
investigation, no
I think
suspects, no
okay,
nothing.
fine. The point that I'm making here is it's not so much who shot him, who fired the shot, who ordered it. Now, if it's the Texas oil mob, and you know how you lay it out when you talk about barrels of oil, which has to do with international. Israel could may happen play a part in that. When we're talking about oil, we're not just talking about okay discovering oil in the ground and you putting it in people's cars or what we use it for. That I think that interlocks with a lot of international intelligence. I listen after everything what was said tonight. what is coming out in these unredacted files, yeah, it makes sense that Israel, the CIA, and it could be the Texas oil mob, all in three, killed JFK.
Well, see, there's another thing too. Joe Kennedy Sr.
Yep. I was waiting on that.
was a gangster. He ran bootlegging, controlled the wharves in the docks in Boston, and he did contract murders allegedly for Al Capone. If you saw the movie starring
De Niro.
Liam Neeson,
Oh.
where he's talking about Marlowe, the gangster that was involved, who was the American ambassador to England, that was in fact Kennedy. If you saw Road to Perdition, where Tom Hanks played the hitman who was on the run because his son stowed away and witnessed the
Okay,
murder,
so you think because
that
his
was
father was
Joe
in a
Kennedy.
mob that it was a retaliation?
He was the mob. He was running the
Okay,
Irish
no, my
mob in
question
Boston.
is that was a retaliation to kill his son?
It may
I don't
be,
think so.
but you see,
It's not,
look, look,
I
look,
don't
look.
think,
I
wait,
said,
this is
listen,
what I'm saying,
listen.
Judge. This is what I'm saying. The reason why I'm not going to say, I'm not going to agree to that theory, because we're talking about the president of the United States. A mob cannot kill the president of the United States. You're going to need the help of the CIA, of Mossad, Israel, or whatever. A mob does not have that reach or that type of access to power to kill the president of the United States.
Oh yes,
I
they
would
do.
never give them that much
Yes, they do.
credit.
But Dana, the mob
Yes,
was
they
the
do.
CIA was working with the
But
mob.
that's what I'm
If you
saying.
look
You
at what they
have
were,
to have an outside entity like the CIA,
Yeah.
like Israel, to even try to make that happen. And I don't think it was some Irish Boston mob that had a beef with his father.
It
And
wasn't. I
no, no,
didn't
no.
say
Well, I'm
it.
saying, let me just
Look,
say
look.
this.
It's not Irish
Let me just
Boston
finish this.
mob.
Let me finish this.
Look,
When I was talking, when you brought up the Texas oil mob, to me that would make sense. But it would make sense if it's linked with the CIA and Israel. It's not
look.
just
Let me
one
explain what the
entity.
problem is with the CIA. The CIA hires private contractors to do
Mm-hmm.
their killing. Those are real live special ops types, ex soldiers and Marines. They're ex criminals, ex organized crime folk, foreigners who are hired by the CIA. The CIA is composed of a bunch of little dweeb nerds who were dorks in college. That's how the whole thing got off on a bad foot. The typical CIA agent couldn't handle himself on a street in America. But when they started this after World War II, they needed people who were familiar with Europe. Who was more familiar with Europe but the rich kids who had traveled in Europe, studied in Europe?
Bush Senior.
Yeah, and they hired these little dweebs to come up with this mess. The CIA basically failed at what it was set up to do. So rather than finding out for the president what was going on, essentially, and this is in this book, Legacy of Ashes, they came up with the idea of, if we can't find out what's going to happen, let us be the ones that make what happens happen. So we will know what's going to be everybody's reaction up front. So one of the problems with the early CIA was they had boule academics who were running the CIA, and that showed in what they do. I know some CIA agents, and at least one of them I knew well from UCLA, and he's a dweeb. It's like I can't imagine this guy being a James Bond.
and Judge, with the Mafia
Well, those
connection,
are a
right?
lot of times.
Okay, the
One
Mafia
second,
connect.
Peter.
Let me let me break this
A
down.
lot of times, the ones that look like a dweeb are
Oh
the
yeah,
ones.
but I know
You
him
know,
for 4 years. He's not that kind.
it's a new movie
I
that
talked to him at
wait,
some.
let me just say this. It's a new movie that came out recently. What is Peter? Anybody? What is that movie that came out? And he's
Working
a
Man.
huh?
The accountant.
No, 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 no. He is he's a computer guy, but he wants to seek revenge of the people that killed his wife. and he wanted to become an assassin, but he didn't have it in him. But what he ended up doing, he ended up killing the enemies, but he used his expertise in tech to do it. It's called the disguise or some shit. It's a
Look,
word. It's a word that you will describe a dweeb.
look. The guy in question was afraid to walk on the streets in LA at the time. All right. Now, that's the problem. But when I was talking about mobsters, what I'm saying is this: the problem that Kennedy had with the mob was that he double crossed them.
That part.
He gave them a specific promise that if they did a certain something for him, he would do a certain something for them. He double crossed them.
Oh, the movie is called The Amateur
Yeah,
that
I
came
know,
out.
but
The
I
Amateur.
know.
No, you don't
I
know
don't
because it's
forget the
new.
movie. I know real life.
No, my
Look.
point
I
is,
know
let,
real
let, let me
lives.
let me just say this. I'm not pushing against you. Let me just finish
Okay,
my
go ahead.
statement from before. The movie is called The Amateur. So that was just referencing to when you were saying someone that looks like a dweeb. Just because someone may look and talk like a dweeb, they have expertise that can actually get an assignment done.
Look,
That's what I'm
here's
saying.
what I'm saying. I was a defense lawyer. I also got around, I had friends and a certain brother. And what happens, I knew real live assassins. And this guy wasn't one. In fact, he used to come to my green room at least once a month to consult with somebody who was a real live assassin who worked on my show. He's dead now.
Sure. Yeah, and Dana, it does make sense. Like thinking about what the judge said, right? Like, so the Teamsters was doing all the money laundering, right? They would be able to get those union loans. They would give it out to the mobsters, and they would be able to loan it out for a significant amount of points every week and make money by, loan sharking. And so Kennedy basically, like Judge said, made a deal with these mobsters, and then he double crossed them and had his brother RFK go after these guys and start to like prosecute them. So that's a big no-no, right? And if they already have
That's it.
connection, yeah, yep.
Yeah, but no,
That's exactly it.
I
Now,
get. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. What I'm
now,
disagreeing is with the mob. They don't have that reach or that
they
power to
have that
kill a
reach.
United States president.
They
They
did
have
back in the
that
day,
reach.
Dana. They did back in the day.
What back?
Look,
Don't
look,
tell me
look at
that. What
this.
you talk about the
Look
1800s?
at
No,
what happened with Reagan. Who shot him?
Who
Hinckley,
shot
right?
him?
Hinckley. Wasn't
Hinckley
it
So they
shot.
Hinckley?
say.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was a nobody. They caught him on the scene. They didn't kill him. He got prosecuted
So
for
what
what he
was the
did.
reason? Who was behind?
He
Who's
was
pulled him up
crazy.
to
He
it?
was a lunatic. Look what
He
happened to
was like Mark
McKinley.
David Chapman, probably, right? Like
Yeah,
the one
look,
who
No,
shot
I
Lenin.
think
look how
George
Teddy
Bush
Roosevelt got to be.
HW wanted him dead.
Look how Teddy Roosevelt got to be president when McKinley got assassinated. Look at what happened to Teddy Roosevelt when somebody shot him right in the chest. He survived and went on and made his speech, then went to the hospital.
Yeah, he was a different
So
breed.
yeah, but I don't think it
So what
was
was there was
the
a classic
mob. Wait
movie.
1 second.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
think it was the mob that did it. So it's like, I mean, listen,
Do you think it was the
the
Mossad, Dana?
yes,
Well, who was
Well, there's
connected to the
no spec.
Mossad? The mob, the
and the
Jews and the
CIA.
Italians.
Here, look,
No, but that's what I
The
said earlier. That it
speculation.
wasn't. That's what I said earlier. It wasn't just one entity. It was multiple
Well, let me
entities.
put it this way: if you read Legacy of Ashes, which was research done on the 50,000 released documents in 2002 and 3, what happens is they have a whole chapter on a discussion where this was on the White House tapes that were released, and Robert Kennedy, McNamara, and the head of the CIA are discussing who might want to kill John F. Kennedy. Their primary suspect was somebody that Fidel Castro would be behind because of the multiple attempts they had made on Castro's life. Now, that's one of them. The other thing I brought up, Joe Kennedy's activities as a gangster in Boston. As I said, he was supposed to allegedly have pulled off the hits for Al Capone. out of Chicago. That means there were a lot of angry people that were mad at the Kennedy family for what went down. Kennedy was the youngest president ever elected to U.S. president, as McNamara, the Secretary of Defense, noted on occasions before he died during interviews. They were cocksure, arrogant, and young, and thought they knew way more than they did, and then scared the hell out of themselves when they found out how ignorant they really were and how dangerous that was. All right. Now, the other point is that you've got those who wanted revenge against the Kennedy family. You've got double crossing the mob. You've got the situation with Fidel Castro. And I doubt the Russians wanted to kill him because they had bamboozled him. If you read what Khrushchev had to say about the Cuban Missile Crisis, it looks like the Russians or the Soviets engineered that specifically so they could get an agreement from the U.S. to remove the intermediate range ballistic missiles that were ringing the Soviet Union. Now, there is this famous 8-hour long telegram, and the telegram puts the geographic locations, map coordinates, and it lists the serial numbers of the missiles and the vehicles that these missiles were on specifically and precisely. And it says, we want these launchers removed along with the missiles in question. And when Kennedy went along with it, they sent another long telegram back saying, you haven't complied because all you did was move them to the following locations, which scared the hell out of the Kennedy administration with that demonstration of intense intelligence on behalf of the Soviet Union. So they didn't have any need to take him out because he cooperated with them. He went along with this thing. Khrushchev told him, he said, look, we don't have a free press over here. It won't embarrass us. You can act like you backed us down, get those missiles out, and everybody will think you had us turned tail. We don't care. Actually, it backfired on Khrushchev later. But yeah, it is what it is.
So let me read this. Mario posted this. JFK files. Castro supporters moved into the U.S. political circles. In June 1961, intelligence report outlines how pro-Fidel Castro operatives established themselves inside Cuban exile communities in the U.S., blending into anti-Castro networks. The source, a close personnel and political associate of former Cuban President Carlos Prio Sakaras, identified several individuals tied to the rebel. Can people please go on speaker? Go on mute. Identified several individuals tied to the rebel army under Castro's command who had relocated to the United States. These included a former aide to rebel army Captain Angel Banos, along with key contacts Gertz Minoyo, Diagoez, and Ava Gortez. I'm saying it wrong. The report warned these agents were operating under deep cover and recommended further interrogation. JFK files, and they give the source number. It's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, and that's discussed in those 50,000 documents that Legacy of Ashes is based on. When Kennedy, McNamara, and the head of the CIA were discussing these things in the White House.
It also has in these files going back to, it says, Communist Party leaders discussed U.S. labor union cooperations. In May 1947, a U.S. intelligence report revealed high-level meetings between Communist Party leaders from Italy, Yugoslavia, and France addressing the unification of global labor factions. The report detailed a secret gathering in Paris where key figures from the Communist Party discussed. Can everybody just please mute up? The report detailed a secret gathering in Paris where key figures from the Communist Party discussed strengthening ties with American labor unions, particularly the AFL and CIO. The French communist leadership expressed frustration over the difficulty of uniting these factions. Jecoult Duke Laux, whatever, a prominent French communist leader, emphasized the importance of fostering unity within the American labor movement, especially within the CIO. The aims was to align international communist factions in a broader effort against international reaction. The meeting included major figures such as Robert Abbott and other notable delegates, and American labor journalist John Y. Pittem acted as an interpreter. Despite high-level secrecy, the report suggested the primary goal was establishing international unity against capitalist forces. So this is going back to May 1947.
My uncle, he's my great uncle. He lives in Louisiana, and he's Italian, and he's like 90. But one day, I brought up something about the mafia, and my mom and dad and all of them always said that my uncle, great uncle, he was affiliated with them, and sure enough, he had gaming license and everything. But the funny thing is back to what you're saying is they business people. I said something about the mafia, and he said, "Son, they not the mob." He says, "That's Hollywood." He said, they just business people."
Yeah. Mm. What is so? I mean, listen, you're talking about 80,000 papers of this stuff, and they're referencing things that happened decades in the 40s and 50s leading up to when Kennedy was president. I'm just saying it's a lot of factors involved, and maybe a lot of people were not happy with the direction where President Kennedy wanted to take this country.
A
So,
whole lot of people weren't. Um, the truth of the matter is right before he was assassinated, 2 weeks before, in a social studies class in high school, we got into Kennedy's ratings, and they were low, very low. So he was not a popular
but he was
president at the time
adored
he
by the
got
people. I'm
assassinated.
gonna come to you, Al Hotep. I see you. But Kennedy, wasn't he favorable amongst the American people?
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can somebody
Hello?
else say something? I want to see if the judge can hear you.
Can you hear me, Judge?
He needs to. He's moving around too much in his house. He didn't hear nothing. He gonna have to drop down and come back up. I'm about to close out.
Your Honor, you need to reset. You need to
Yeah,
reset.
I think he also needs to probably, if it's not updating his app, he needs to go somewhere in the house where it's not going to be like going in and out. Because I could tell he's moving around. Yeah,
I got cut off
I
again.
think because you keep moving around in your house.
I'm not moving around. I'm sitting in the same chair.
Oh, I don't know. Um, what was I saying? I'm gonna go to El Hotep, and then we're gonna close out. Oh, I was saying, wasn't he loved? Wasn't he loved amongst the American people? Wasn't he favorable amongst American people?
His ratings were low.
Yeah, but ratings could be manipulated.
I know, but I'm just saying he was
Hello? Oh my God. I'm gonna go straight to you, El Hotel, because I don't know what's going on. He keeps going in and out.
Okay. Hey, what's up, Dana? Conversation kind of reminded me of a book. I don't know if the book was discussed or not, or if it was even mentioned. Um, no, The Devil's Chessboard. It's about Alan Dulles, who was director of the CIA during part of Kennedy's term. He ultimately got fired due to the bad faith failure and stuff like that. And it talks about the CIA's connection with the mob, other foreign intelligence agencies, and stuff like that. So when you guys were discussing the possible connection between the mob, other elements within the United States government, and other foreign agencies, the connection is very possible. There's a movie that also reminded me of this whole conversation, The Good Shepherd, which points out the CIA's connection with Yale, Skull and Bones, and that whole thing. So I find this whole thing very interesting, and how what's not being discussed and what is being discussed. I think the rabbit hole goes deeper than what it is. Um, I strongly think that you will probably never find out the main culprits. I personally believe that George H.W. Bush was deeply involved. He probably was more involved than most of us believe. But if you do get a chance to look up that book, it's a real good book. It points out some very interesting things. It's called The Devil's Chessboard, and it talks about Alan Dulles' CIA and a lot of the activities that they were doing.
I appreciate that. I have one more statement or theory question regarding the mob with this, because the mob, CIA, yes, they could have been working together, but here's the thing though. Who had carte blanche? The CIA. I'm going to go with the CIA. The CIA wasn't going to take orders from the mob because the CIA have the government behind them, because the CIA is a private entity, but they're contracted by our government. So maybe the CIA used the mob, or they used each other to eliminate who they would consider their enemy, which would have been Kennedy. Only thing I'm saying with the mob, them not having that reach, I don't think they have that power to say to the CIA, which is contracted by our government, you got to follow my orders. I don't see that happening.
Well, they had that kind of relationship with J. Edgar Hoover. Remember what I said earlier? Part of what's wrong with the whole equation is the FBI was covering for its incompetence. J. Edgar Hoover used to be a gambling addict, and the mob used to let him gamble. If he won, he kept his money. If he lost, he owed nobody anything. And remember, until just shortly before this, 3 years before, J. Edgar Hoover was denying that the mob existed until they discovered him up there in that upstate New York meeting. So he had been denying that the mob existed, and the FBI was the federal agency charged with such investigations to prevent these kind of things from happening. So because of the power and authority that the mob had over J. Edgar Hoover,
Right. They basically did to J. Edgar Hoover what J. Edgar Hoover was doing to presidents,
yeah,
which makes sense. See
Yeah,
that, and that's
Dana,
what I'm talking about.
I just heard that last part. I don't know. I missed the last like probably 10 seconds because that was coming up. But Judge, what you were alluding to is J. Edgar Hoover was actually blackmailed supposedly by the Jews, right? By Meyer Lansky.
no, no,
Uh,
no, no.
no?
What I'm saying is J. Edgar Hoover denied that the mob existed until about 1960, when the mob got caught by accident in an upstate New York meeting. And
Right.
he had a gambling addiction, allegedly. And when he won, he got his payoffs. And if he lost, he didn't know anything. The mob took care of him. because he said they didn't exist, so he did not get involved in mob prosecution.
Right, but Judge, I also have read that J. Edgar Hoover was a cross-dresser, and
He was a sissy.
right. So he was a sissy,
Colton
and that
was his boyfriend, who was the assistant director of the FBI.
They
right, and
cover
that
all of that in the movie. What is it, J.
Was he
Edgar?
like Lindsey Graham?
J.
no, but
Edgar, it's all in the movie. All of that is in the movie that you just discussed, Judge. But there's a classic movie, I think it's Frank Sinatra or somebody, where they're on the Cuban island before, because all the rich people used to go there and party, but then they shut it down. And that was around the same time of the Cuban missile
yeah, The
crisis.
Godfather, Godfather 2.
No,
Remember?
not The Godfather. It's one of the, nope, not The God. It's like a really old
Manchurian
one.
Candidate?
No, not that one either. I'm thinking it's Frank Sinatra. I'm trying to think who the guy was, and it was with Joan. I mean, one of those beautiful women, Joan Crawford. One of those. It's a really old classic movie in black and white. But
You're talking about when Fidel Castro threw Batista out of Cuba.
Yes, and they had to get all the Americans out.
But
He didn't get all of them out.
But so to your point though, held by the
Wait,
Jews, and it actually had.
Wait, Peter, your phone was going in and out. And
I'm sorry, I'm driving through the
hold on
mountains.
for a second, Peter. I have a question. Can I please, Daniel in the YouTube says, Judge, can I please get your take on Lane Mayer's 5 felonies for First Amendments in Arizona? Who is that?
Who in Arizona?
Judge, can you hear me?
I hear you. I'm trying to figure out who you're
I
talking
don't
about.
know. They say, can I please get your take on Lane Mayer's Myers 5 felonies for First Amendment in Arizona? We don't know who that is. Well, he doesn't know who that is. Nobody up here knows.
I mean, I'm trying to understand what he's saying for 5.
I guess this person has 5 felonies under the First Amendment, but we don't know the story because
Well, I'm trying to figure out how you would get felonies under the First
I have
Amendment.
no idea. This is how he worded it.
The First Amendment is a right, not a sanction.
It says 5 felonies for 1 amendment in Arizona. I don't know.
Needs to
All right,
clarify
Daniel,
that.
you're gonna have to clarify and rewrite that. So go ahead. I'm gonna go to Henrietta and back to you, Peter, and Exorcist, and then we'll wind. Please, nobody don't request to come up here because everybody want to come up at the last 10 minutes. No, because it'll be 10 minutes. It'll be 3 hours. Go ahead, Henrietta, and then
We got
Exorcist.
to institute
Hi,
the other
Dana.
policy you have, Dana, with the 45-minute rule.
Huh?
Hi, Dana. We don't want you to go.
No,
We don't want you to go.
we have to go.
I know, but you know we don't want you to. Hi, Judge.
Hi there.
How are you? Are you feeling better?
I'm okay. I wasn't feeling bad.
Well, a couple of weeks you had, it sound like you almost had a very serious upper respiratory infection or something.
I had a cold.
Yeah, it was more than that. But I'm glad
Well,
that
I
you're
mean,
better.
it cleared up pretty quickly.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that very much. Happy to hear it. I wanted to say hi. And I remember seeing things about how Kennedy got elected, and that was a narrow victory at the time, I believe. And he won by appealing to housewives at home with little commercials while they were like doing other things, and he caught their attention. And that's kind of how he won. He wasn't really supposed to, but he did. And I don't know about favorability, of course, because I was barely born when that was going on. But I must say that I always thought of him as a great president. I don't care about what he did with Hollywood and women. I don't care about that. I think he was a wonderful president, and America lost greatly uh, by his death. And I don't think we've recovered from it, honestly. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you. I love you guys. Bye.
Okay.
Love you back. I have another question on YouTube. Judge, was there a connection between Jack Ruby's and J. Edgar Hoover?
I don't know. I talked to somebody that worked in Jack Ruby's club in Dallas, also with Marie Brown, who quite often frequented the place. In fact, we went to his club and we sat there for about 4 hours talking to people. And Jack Ruby was supposed to have had an incurable case of cancer, and there was supposed to be some family benefits for him doing what he did. So it does not look like it was just this guy killed Kennedy, I'm going to get him. It looked like I'm going to keep him from talking.
Um,
So I'd say that Jack Ruby was an interesting character and did have mob connections.
mhm. Um, Peter, then Exorcist, and then we'll close out.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Just to finish my point earlier, that J. Edgar Hoover was blackmailed by Meyer Lansky, and then he turned around and they had video, or allegedly they made recordings of him cross-dressing and involved in homosexual acts at a hotel in New York City. And then he approached them and said, I want to use the same tactics, so you don't leverage me. And he gave them a pass, alluding to what the judge said, that he didn't recognize them until the Appalachian meeting in the '60s. That was all I wanted to finish with.
Exodus.
That's right.
Oh,
Hey,
Exodus.
Judge, what was the name of that book you say read?
Legacy of Ashes. It's an exclamation that Eisenhower gave after the CIA assured him that there were no flyovers being done of the Soviet Union, who had complained. He gave the Soviets his assurance and word as a man that it wasn't happening. And then Gary Powers got shot down 2 weeks after that.
So that's Ashes, ASHES.
Yeah, legacy of ashes. He said,
Okay,
you son of a bitches have left me a legacy of ashes.
thank you.
You lied to me and you lied to the public.
Mhm.
Chad, there's another good one. I just started it. It's called Surprise, Kill, Vanish by Annie Jacobson. And it's specifically regarding everything about the CIA assassination program.
Say that again. Surprise, kill what?
Surprise, Kill, Vanish by Annie Jacobson.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And this is Mario again. Did China deploy troops to Cuba in 1963? A newly uncovered CIA report from December 1963 reveals military activity along Cuba's northern coast, sparking concerns over possible Chinese troop landings. The document names intelligence figures Jin Dra and Juan Condra in covert operations and mentions a mysterious reassignment of Lucy with orders to handle her reservations carefully. The CIA even pushed for a report on whether key intelligence had been intercepted. This too goddamn spooky. This whole thing. Love, you could tell ya. So I think this was a really good space. Maybe a part two to like talk about the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and the mob, and all the entities of theories of who were behind JFK assassination. But yeah, it seemed like 80,000 pages of a ghost. And then let's just say 50 years from now, right? What would be the bombshell documents that a president 50 years from now is going to release?
9/11, 9/11 and
Isn't
COVID.
that out already?
Well, no, that the Mossad. I haven't seen
Right
any.
on about that.
Oh, is 9/11 documents still sealed?
Yeah, no, I think that the Mossad is directly involved in 9/11, from the dancing Israelis to the students that were doing an art project allegedly on
No, but
the.
my question is, are those records still sealed?
They said they were going to release them. I didn't see the release that points to what I'm
So there
speaking
okay,
about.
so there are documented 9/11 records. So that's what I'm saying. So 50 years from now, Like this is what, 50, 30, how many years ago? Is this the 60s, 70, 80, 90? Yeah, 50, 50, over 50 years. Over 50, say 50 years from now, the president 50 years from now, I could still be alive, honey. But the president 50 years from now, what documents would they sign off to be was that unredacted or released? 9/11. And I see all that to say it seemed like it was a lot of shit going on in this country and abroad when you go back to the 60s and back, as compared to what's because we have advanced technology where a lot of stuff we could kind of like Google whether it's true or not. But I don't know, it just seemed like it was a lot of stuff that happened back then, which is taking place, which is a result of what is happening now. But it seems a lot of shit going on back then.
Yeah, Dana, there's a great book on this. I did it in college in political science. It was called Destructive Generation, A Second Look at the 60s. And you see the genesis of where all of all the nonsense that's going on now all came out of the 60s.
Yeah, the
And these,
60s
you
was a
know,
hot mess. And the judge, I think you were a teenager in the 60s, but so we can't blame your generation, but the generation before you, they fucked a lot of stuff up for America now. Oh, go ahead, Lovely. Lovely, you're the last person I brought up, but you'll be the last speaker.
Okay, I just had a question. So in addition to the JFK files, Trump was saying that he wanted to release, was it Martin Luther King and someone else's assassination, correct?
Yeah.
He's
yeah,
already
MLK.
done that.
Okay, so I wanted to know, Judge, if you would, what are your thoughts on that briefly?
Well, they don't reach a conclusion that is the accurate one. What you do have available is internal memoranda discussions going on inside the FBI. You have the obvious complicity of J. Edgar Hoover in events. And if you know how to piece it together, you can find the invoice for the 5 XM21 rifles that the FBI got in late December 1967, 5,000 rounds of special subsonic ammunition. And then in late April 1968, you will also find that they did an inventory search because when the Justice Department ordered them to return the 5 rifles to the Defense Department, the FBI claimed they lost one of them. That's the actual murder weapon. The ballistic characteristics of the weapon in question, the XM21, precisely match the unusual characteristics reflected in the bullet or on the bullet that was removed from King's body.
Wow,
So
thank
you
you.
can find stuff like that.
Hey,
Dana,
Peter, I
one
just
more
want
point too, not to give sure. Okay. Yeah,
Peter,
go
I
ahead.
wanted to tell you real quick. Another good book that I read about 12, 13 years ago was A Family of Secrets about the Bush family. It's called A
I got to check
Family
that
of
out. I loved reading Bush's Herbert Walker Bush's biography because you see how like entwined he was and how he came to power, and then him heading the CIA and the allegation that they were actually responsible for all the cocaine that was and the properties taken over from Noriega. You can go down that rabbit hole. That would be a whole space that we could
Yeah,
Well,
do.
that's a
It's
good
first of all,
pretty
idea.
incredible.
I think
that man's a dirty crook, and his son was too. I hate I even voted for him. But
You're talking about George Herbert Walker Bush. See, the whole Bush family started off in the late 19th century.
they
This
suck.
guy ran a foundry, and Carnegie and Rockefeller discovered him. And he supplied information to the U.S. government, which gave him a free pass on a lot of stuff. He dealt with iron foundry business matters and also what they call paper entrepreneurialism, which was to buy up corporate entities and sell off their assets with no intention of operating the corporation. You have an interesting thing. After World War I, Carnegie and Rockefeller acquired the German armaments industry, formed a consortium, turned it over to Prescott Bush's dad, I forget his name, and he ran it all through World War II. So he got checks from them all through World War II, and he sent a check to Hitler for his birthday every year through 1944. Tried to, couldn't in 45. And then Prescott Bush became elected senator from Massachusetts. And he helped Truman, or supported Truman when Truman integrated the armed services with Executive Order 1981. He also, meaning Prescott Bush, the senator from Massachusetts, mostly posted most of King's bonds during the civil rights era when he got arrested, and that was a bond set. So he was in Massachusetts. As a matter of fact, the interesting connection is it looks like he was the senator from Massachusetts next before John F. Kennedy got elected to the vacant position that he left.
All right. All right, Lovely, you said you had a quick question, and Henrietta, I see your hand up. Both y'all just kind of make it quick so we could wind it down.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Dana. Judge, you had said earlier that JFK had some type of connections to the mob and was like pissing them off. I'm loosely paraphrasing. Was that the same for MLK in any capacity?
He didn't have mob connections.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know.
I'll tell you what, though, J. Edgar Hoover was accusing him of being a communist.
Yeah.
And the thing is the communists supposedly had infiltrated the black churches and the black civil rights movement, which had a great deal to do with his discussion internally with memoranda that they should consider critically whether King would be more dangerous alive as somebody to galvanize the anti-war movement and revitalize the labor movement, or more dangerous as a dead martyr. They chose, so he became a dead martyr.
Henrietta?
Hi. Yes, I just had a quick question, if I may, for the judge. Um, Judge, is it constitutional for Congress to fund foreign countries' wars under the Commerce um, Clause or whatever it's called? Is that really constitutional to fund like USAID and things like that?
It's not unconstitutional. For
Okay.
the last several thousand years, various and sundry nations, principalities, and monarchies have been funding foreign entities when it is felt that doing so is in their best interest. That's a matter of foreign policy. In other words, Rome did it, Greece did it, Egypt did it, Mesopotamia did it, meaning yours, Samaria, Babylon, etc., etc. In other words, you either fight these guys and subdue them through warfare, or you can bribe them or pay them tribute. So there is nothing unusual about that. That's just traditional international politics.
Thank you, sir.
Um,
I got one point, Dana. 10 seconds. And we could probably do even another space on that eventually. I think 50 years from now, another one that'll come out was the U.S. government's creation of COVID, and the reasoning for it is to kill off a lot of individuals. They don't have to pay out the Social Security to them,
Right on. You're
and then
right.
lock everything down.
Yep.
yeah. Lovely. I'm looking at your meme. So I wanted to say this because I keep forgetting. I put the link to this recorded space. I'll put the YouTube link to this recorded space in underneath this space in the Jumbotron, and I'll put it in the comment section underneath this space. So if anybody want to, you can share it, please share it. And if you guys want to come back and listen to it, take references or whatever is there on YouTube, and I'll put the link there. And real quick, Lala in YouTube says, who knew the judge had his own channel? Is this new? And I'm like, so it's not new. I created it in 2023 when he was running for mayor, so I could upload, his campaign promotion and speeches or whatever. So that's why I created it for his when he was running for mayor of Memphis back in 2023. And then it's like, okay, I just didn't want it to sit there, so I figure when he does his space on Tuesday, I'll stream live so it could stay active. So you guys could go back and listen to all the spaces he has done on that YouTube channel, The Real Judge Joe Brown 23. And I'll put the link underneath this space. So
I just want to say Judge Joe Brown is very smart, and I love listening to him. He's like a
Judge, you ever
walking
think about doing a
encyclopedia.
show? Yeah, you ever think about doing a show like across the country?
I tell you what, I'm blackballed in the entertainment Hollywood industry. They don't want to have any part of me.
So, another thing about COVID, yeah, my father, he got another booster. I didn't like that, but he feels comfortable getting it. But I do think that it's down the line that information may come out. But then if it's going to come out for COVID, it's going to have to be some other stuff included that they're like keeping from us. But yeah, so I think this definitely needs to be a part two, because it could be, so that we could talk about J. Edgar Hoover, the mob, the CIA, and the Bushes, because honestly, all of that is connected. Excuse me, all of that is connected with, I think, with the assassination. And there was something else that Mario put in here. A cover
Real
for
quick,
this.
Dana, if you get a chance, watch the movie The Good Shepherd.
Oh, that was another question that I had. All the books, and thank you guys for. Please put the links or a picture of the books in the comment section. But I want to ask all the books that everyone recommended. Is it documentaries that's attached to these books? Because I don't got time to be sitting reading all those books. Any documentaries
I
that's
do know The Devil's Chessboard. It's on Audible, so if you want to listen to it, you can just listen to it. But
it's on
it
where?
really
That's
is
a
a
great
good book.
book. Hotep.
Wait,
Yeah,
it's
that's a great
It
book.
wait,
talks
it's on
about
where?
Alan Dulles, The Devil's
Wait.
Chessboard.
Where?
Um, just go on Google and it'll pop right up on Audible.
No. I said documentary. Is it a documentary to that book?
Yeah, you can go on YouTube. Yeah, you definitely can go on YouTube and look up a documentary on Alan Dulles. His brother, John Dulles, was Secretary of State. And they have a very interesting connection. They went to Yale, I do believe. They're connected with the Bushes. So when you talk about Yale, Skull and Bones, CIA, um, that's a real good start right there, because Alan Dulles was definitely pissed off when JFK fired him. And I do believe he very well was probably one of the individuals who ordered the hit on JFK.
So it says here with Mario, CIA shipped Magnum pistols through Japanese embassy in December of 1963, and JFK was assassinated in November 63. Declassified document reveals covert weapons operations just weeks after Kennedy's assassination. So a lot of Asian stuff with the Vietnamese and Taiwan wanted to join forces. Vietnam planned to kick out U.S. troops in 1963. It was a lot of shit going on.
And Dana, from what I've
That's
read,
a lot.
like the DEA came out of the CIA. It was actually the Bureau of Narcotics at one point, and then it was really just like a cover
I've
program
heard that
to,
too.
to
Yeah.
check communism globally. And they're just saying that, oh, we have to go after this war on drugs, but it really is just to check communists.
So it says Vietnam planned to cut U.S. aid in 1963. CIA files reveal NGO, Din, I can't pronounce their goddamn names, the brother and top advisor of the President Dem, pushed for South Vietnam to phase out American aid. Buddhist-led coup plot in Vietnam in 1963. Did China deploy troops to go? Okay, that was that. All right, so thank you guys for coming up. This is a good space. Let's just do a part 2 and emphasize more on the FBI, CIA, mob, and the Bushes. That's going to be a loaded conversation.
When are you gonna
And
do
please, people,
that?
can people please? It's a 3-hour space. Can you come up in the beginning? Peter, he gonna be up here within the first 10 minutes, honey, and get the ball rolling. And so do other people. It's just get and then that's what I'm saying. Like y'all, that's I'm like maybe people just love to listen to certain people, but come early because the conversation could be extended. Like if you come last 30 minutes and then you drop a question and it's detailed, that may roll into another hour. And I just don't have that in me. So come early so that the conversation, people won't feel rushed, or it could be a more in-depth conversation. Because Peter and others, and with the judge, anti-woke, Peter, Chad, everyone, El Hotep, they will sit up here for 2 hours straight, honey, and hold the whole conversation, which
Oh,
is
this
fine.
this is a master's level class. I mean, this is like what you would be discussing in a lot of these
I
master.
saw Adam. Adam didn't even come up. I saw Adam down there. He usually come up. He ain't come up, but which is fine. But yeah, I don't mind y'all up here talking majority of the time. But I'm just saying, other people, if don't wait till the last minute if you're able to, because I know, Lovely, you were in transition, on a train and stuff like that. So yeah,
Mhm.
Hey
but
Dana, I think that Elon needs to change the name Groke to Judge Joe Brown.
probably. Are you still there, Judge?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So,
I think that would be a great show, though, Judge. And I think that you don't need Hollywood. I mean, I do. I'm in a lot of spaces with Isaiah Washington, who's been blackballed by Hollywood as well, and he's talking about putting a show on the road as well and connecting with the people who directed The Sound of Freedom, exposing the pedophilia ring that surrounds all of the little hats in Hollywood and the global elite and how they use that to leverage people. So. I think that'd be amazing to put together. I'd love to go to one of those shows. That'd be really cool.
He and I talk every now and then. I've also been talking to Candace Owens and Kim Brown about doing stuff. Kim Brown is Jim Brown's daughter. Jim Brown, the football player.
Yeah.
all right. So, thank you, everybody. First of all, thank you, everybody on YouTube. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys with the questions in the chat and just listening. Everybody listening in this space. And definitely to all the speakers. I really appreciate you guys coming up. Great questions, great conversation, and great discussion. And we could do a follow-up next week, Tuesday, with the judge and go a little bit deeper with J. Edgar Hoover, the mob, and the Bushes. And so, Judge, close us out.
Hey, stay strong. Keep thinking. Keep doing it. Don't give up, because the far left is still trying to perpetrate its degeneracy on the rest of us, and we don't need that. So, have a good time. Sleep well. Work hard tomorrow.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye, boo
Good
boo.
night. Thanks,
Oh,
guys.
I'm
Great
sorry.
space.
Let me promote
Good
my
night,
X
y'all.
space. I see y'all on Thursday and Friday. Co-host Peter, honey. Yes. I see y'all Thursday and Friday. All right. Good night.